Okay, here we go. Welcome in, everybody. Let me know that you can hear me and see me okay. I had a little bit of a technical issue getting the stream set up this morning, so let me know if I'm coming through all right, if you can hear me and see me okay. And then I'll get going here. Okay, great. I've got some confirmation there in the chat, so awesome. Well, I'm very glad to be live this morning doing some Q&A and birth chart readings as we promote the Kickstarter campaign. We have just today and tomorrow left in our campaign, and we have a long way to go. We still need the support of around 600 backers within the next 48 hours. So I'm going to be doing everything that I can to rally the support of the last backers we need to cross the finish line and meet our goal for the year. A big thanks to everybody who's already supported the channel. And today I hope that I can gather the support of some of you who have not yet pitched in, but maybe enjoyed the channel and wouldn't mind, contributing a few dollars. Even $5, $10 helps the channel immensely. So we will get to the Kickstarter campaign. We'll take some Q&A. We'll do some birth chart readings. You guys know the format's pretty much the same format, but hopefully some new interesting conversations and also some good birth charts to learn and study from. So on that note, let's hear where you all are coming from. As people are gathering in, it's nice to take roll call. You guys know I love seeing, especially when people are coming from different countries. That is so cool to see. Really appreciate hearing where you're all coming from. So drop it into the chat box. Tell me where in the world you're coming from, what city and state you hail from. Let's see, we've got Canada, and we have Sweden. Isn't that amazing? I just love that. Switzerland, Tampa. I think you're at 1,306 backers now. Dang, 73,000 subscribers. Yeah, I think we have enough subscribers on the channel to hopefully get across the finish line. We just need about 600 more backers. And, we've done that in the final days of a Kickstarter before. So, we'll see. We'll see if we get there. I'm very hopeful that we still can. From Texas, Leah, just showing up for the live streams, Leah. Much love to you in Texas. From New Smyrna Beach, Florida, from New Hampshire, from San Diego, from Ohio, from Boulder, Colorado, Czech Republic, Mahasweta from India. Nice to meet you. Thanks for being here. United States, Pennsylvania, Denmark, Northern Cali, Denmark, Michigan, Idaho. Hello from a backer in Bucharest, Romania. Oh my gosh, that's so cool. Thank you, Florinda. Really appreciate you backing us. Grand Rapids, Michigan, Mississippi, Indonesia, North Pole, good for hot flashes. From Finland, Portugal, oh my gosh, and Massachusetts and Pennsylvania, England. I donated and I'm hoping to join your first year in June, coming from Boulder, Colorado. Thank you so much. That's such a nice thing to say, Polly. Welcome to the programs. I hope that you will enjoy them. In fact, I know you will. I feel that confident that our programs they're amazing. Not just, it's the teachings, it's the material, it's the community. Pour a lot of love into those programs. All right, from Spain, Carly from Minneapolis. All right. Go Vikings. Indonesia, Baltimore, Cape Town, South Africa, Ireland, Chicago, North Carolina. Amazing. So good to be here with all of you this morning on a Monday morning, just prior to the new year. What I'm going to do for starters this morning as we get rolling with this live stream is to talk to you about the Kickstarter campaign, to try and rally some support. And we'll go from there. So when I go to the Kickstarter, it says project will only be funded if total reached by deadline. Is it possible you lose all your funding? I've already donated. No, so we set a bare minimum so that we don't run into losing our support, right? So we put in a bare minimum that does not reflect our actual goal, because we don't want to if we get so close to our actual goal and don't reach it, then everything is gone because it's all or nothing funding. So what a lot of fundraisers do is they set like a basic minimum goal. And then when you cross that goal, you know that you're not going to lose anything you earn, but it's still a matter of, will you get to the funding goal that you actually need? So that's how you kind of work with that all or nothing funding. So we met our minimum goal in the first weeks of the Kickstarter, which was great, but our actual goal is still out in front of us. A significant amount of backers still needed, about 600. So, all right, on that note, let's talk about the Kickstarter campaign. So we are at, right now, as of the time that I'm making this live stream on Monday morning, we are at 1,306 backers, which is amazing. Thank you to everybody who has already donated. But that means that we need 630 more backers by about 10 a.m. on New Year's Day. So we go, for most people, it's going to be by tomorrow night at midnight, right? Because by the end of the day tomorrow, that's when we're going to probably know if we met our goal or not. So with today and tomorrow left, we still need the support of, now another donation came in, 629 backers. Every single donation helps. Let me tell you how you can find the link to the Kickstarter. It's in the live stream chat. I'm putting it in there right now. You can also find it on the website, nightlightastrology.com. If you click on, that's, let me just delete that comment. I gave you the live stream from yesterday's link. Let me give you this one. This is the right link. There you go. There's the link to the Kickstarter campaign, or you can find it over at nightlightastrology.com. Click on the 2025 Kickstarter link. You'll be taken over there. You can pitch in to support the channel and all the free content that I produce year round. This is how I support myself. This is how we support a staff of 11 people, including a full-time social media person that is helping me day in and day out to publish, distribute, edit, create transcripts, make sure, everything is set up on all platforms for people. Announcements are made, newsletters are sent out for the content. So that's a full-time job. Someone's living, and that, including my own and the rest of the staff, depends greatly on the success of the Kickstarter. It's a full-time production to do this, to create content 5 days a week. So what I ask everyone is, like, if you appreciate it, if it's something that you enjoy, that you listen to, and you get something good from, you learn about astrology, you track your horoscopes, you enjoy it, it's entertainment, you laugh, you have insights, you cry, whatever the case might be, that you consider giving even $5 to support the channel. That's really going to help. Every single donation adds up. And we still need the support of 600 plus backers today and tomorrow, which means we need people to head over there and pitch in. Now, when you do pitch in, there's a variety of rewards that we have that make it really amazing to pitch in. And after I go through these, I'll open up for Q&A. We can have a conversation about astrology and then do some birth chart readings. So I'm going to take you over there, nightlightastrology.com. You can find the link to the Kickstarter there. You can scroll down and see the rewards we offer. Some people are asking if I make 2 donations, do they count as 2 separate backers? Only if you do it through different email address. That's the only way that they count it as a separate one. Thank you. That's really sweet to even think of that. That's so sweet. Thank you. Now, the Astrology of 2025 calendar allows you to track the astrology for the year. The Astrology of 2025 audio video. I've lost my voice because I was at the Vikings-Packers game last night. My wife and I went for special date night. What a game. That was really cool. We usually lose to the Packers. I have no sympathy whatsoever for some Nightlight students I know who are Packers fans. They get no sympathy from me because you guys always win. It's our turn. I'm just playing. All right. The Astrology of 2025 audio video is there for you to check out. That is a great reward that gives you an in-depth look at all of the major astrology in the year ahead. That's a great reward. You support the channel. You get really awesome exclusive content looking at all of the major transits of 2025. The Oracle Speaks is my book. I went to school. I did a master's degree and a Master of Fine Arts degree in creative nonfiction writing, in memoir writing. This is a memoir about how I, as a little boy growing into an adult, started learning how to talk to oracles and how to speak with signs and symbols. And the story is really, I think, the story of all of us and how we connect with oracles. And so I've written the book in such a way as to outline my own connection to astrology, primarily because I want a way of capturing something of the lineage that I try to represent as a school and as a teacher, and give people who study with me some sense of my personal journey, because that's important when you're studying with someone, to understand their own personal story and how they've connected with what they're doing. So this book is something that it's like 10 years in the making, and I'm in the process of writing the 8th out of 12 chapters of the book right now. You get each chapter in the first polished draft form in audio version. You get the audio book and you get the text version as the chapters are being released. That'll probably be, you'll be getting it about probably a year to 2 years before it reaches print. So cool thing to check out. I have really enjoyed writing it. I think you'll really enjoy the storytelling, especially if you like the storytelling aspect of my channel. Year ahead horoscope readings. That's about 8 hours worth of content. Imagine a horoscope reading for 2025, all the major transits for your sun or rising sign, like you'd watch on my channel to start the month. But imagine this is 8 hours long, covering all 12 signs for the entire year ahead. That's probably the best value of all of the rewards. Then you have a bunch of master classes that I've taught in the past. Those are 8 to 10 hours worth of content. That's a great deal on really in-depth topics in astrology. The Astrology for Complete Beginners course is ideal for people who are brand spanking new to astrology. Ask 3 Horary Questions is a reading service that I offer. It's a really good discount on the normal price of my horary readings. And you can see the 2023 and 24 masterclass bundles. Those are going to be 30 to 40 hours worth of content on advanced topics in ancient astrology. And then we have our Roots and Spheres Moon Circle. We start meeting this Thursday night for the first circle of the year. If you want to get together and be given an experiential, kind of set of tools for every moon circle of the year. We're going to look at the astrology. We pair the astrology of the month with a herbal teacher plant medicine that we diet. You can pick most of these up at like your local co-op or grocery store. And then we work with gemstones and rituals that are meant to help us connect with the astrology of each month. So it's a very experiential circle. It's not about learning, it's about experiencing. You can have zero background to join us with that one, because it's really much more about the experience of each month than it is about anything like academic. Now, the 2025 Masterclass series is coming up. You get a good discount if you want to join us for this year's upcoming Masterclass series. My wife's herbal apprenticeships are also available. And then at the bottom, you'll find our best deals on the year, which are our class passes. You can get 1, 2, 3, or 4 of our classes. Those include any and all Nightlight programs, our year 1, 2, 3, and Horary programs. That's 4 years worth of curriculum in ancient astrology. Really want to go deep with your astrology. This is the best deal we offer. Our school, I think, is one of the best in the world. I really believe that, not just because of me, but because of our entire staff. The amount of really amazing community features that our programs include, the tutors, the guidance that you receive, the community that's built, and the focus that we place on how to take ancient techniques and apply them in real life counseling and consulting dynamics, which is really important. If we're going to learn astrology, we should see how it's done with real people. We have a lot of real people come into our classrooms and get readings, so you can see how we're actually applying the things that we're teaching. So anyhow, these are the best deals of the year. And I hope that you will all go over, pick up a reward. But if not, remember, seriously, every single donation helps us. If we get, into that range that we need to get to, 1,937 backers being our goal, we know we'll be in this financial space. We need to maintain what we were doing and maybe slightly build some new things too. Every year we're happy with incremental progress, which is why I set my backer goal at just, the same or better than last year. This year we're right now, as I'm making this again, let's just recalculate here. We're 1,937 backers we need. We're at 1,312, which means we need 625 more within the last 2 days here. So thank you to everyone, again, who's already donated. And if you haven't yet, please consider heading over there today, especially if you get something good from this live stream. You enjoy this Q&A, you like the free readings, you learn something from them, you learn something from the daily content. Be sure to support us. Okay. Now, link is in the live comment section. You can also, again, go over to the website, nightlightastrology.com. This is a good question. I'm confused. The $150,000 goal was exceeded. So that's not our goal. That's a minimum. A Kickstarter is all or nothing funding, right? So what we, like last year, our backer, our financial goal was our actual financial goal is always to be around where we were last year, because we use it to establish a budget for the year. So we kind of project, okay, this is what we had last year. This is what we were able to do with it in terms of staff and overhead and blah, blah, blah. So we look at that number and we go, okay, so like last year we came in around $377,000. Then we have to take out what we'll pay in taxes, like quarterly taxes for our first quarter of the year, what will come out of that for taxes, what will come out through credit card fees and Kickstarter fees. So let's say that number takes us down to like $280,000, right? So then we have an estimate of like, okay, it was about that amount that we came away with when the total amount was 370. And from that number, we then are able to pull out like, okay, so from this, we're going to have this amount of that set aside for our staff, right? And this amount of that will be part of my pay for the channel work for the year. And we divvy it up to the different things that the funds go to, right? So that's how it works. This year, the $150,000 goal is a bare minimum because it's all or nothing. So if I set my goal at $377,000, which is what we made last year, but then, you know, minus all the fees, if we get to that, if we had $1 less than that goal, Kickstarter's all or nothing funding would mean that we get nothing because you either meet your goal or you don't get anything with Kickstarter. And the model that they have there has been like that forever, right? So what most Kickstarter creators do is they set a goal that's like, okay, we're very confident we can get this bare minimum. And then that way, if we get $1 short of 370, we don't lose the 150 that was our minimum goal, right? So once we pass that 150, we guaranteed that we won't lose anything that we earn. But that doesn't mean that we've still met our goal for our budget for the year ahead. Do you see what I'm saying? So that's why it's really important that if we want to be on track from a budgetary standpoint, that we get to that number. Now, the number financially, you could say, well, we need it's because it's a budgetary number and there's some flexibility in there. What we do is we say, if we get to this number of backers, we know that the likelihood is that we'll land in a range that's sustainable for our projected budget, right? So it's because it's a little flexible. So when we're looking at these numbers today, we're saying, look, if we get to the same backer total we got to last year, we're going to be in the same range or maybe slightly better, which is always, that's not a bad thing, right? And then we'll be good. So, so right now we are, like from last year's financial standpoint total, we're like $50,000 behind where we were last year. 2 years ago, we did $427,000. And then again, minus fees and taxes and everything like that. So, it's never like we don't set a hard financial number because we're flexible. We will work our budget around what our numbers end up being. But obviously, having our numbers reflective of where they were last year, we know that we already have a budget that will work because that's what we worked with last year, right? So it makes it a lot easier for us to work with a budget that lands in a range that we're familiar with rather than significantly less than that, because then we have to start juggling things all over the place. So that's kind of the logic of it. It's not a black and white target for us because we're a small business, right? So there's 11 of us on staff, so I can work with things a little bit. We're not a huge business either. So this is not like a, multi-million-dollar corporation or something, you know what I mean? So we can adapt our budgets a little bit, but we really do need to land in that final range to do what we want to do. So, yeah. I love this comment. I don't have a lot of money, but most people can pledge $1. It is easy to pledge. Thank you for all the free content. That's what I mean. It's like they add up. That's the thing, is that 600 pledges of all different levels, $1, $5, it adds up. And then we end up falling in that range. So it really doesn't matter if you give $1, $10, $5, or if you pick a reward and get something bigger, so yeah. Emily says, heading out to do a reading through the Nightlight Affordable Reading Service. The Kickstarter last year made this service possible. What else is possible this year if you donate? Go do it. Yeah, that's right. We have an affordable reading service where we take a total from the highest tier. We take like $15 out of the 150 or whatever it is. The next tier down, we take $10 for Nightlight. And that's for taxes and fees, like just maintenance of things involved with the reading service itself. Our student readers get paid the full amount. We don't take anything from them, just so that they can have a platform to build their career on and people can have affordable reading service. How can we do that? How can we have a reading service that we're literally not monetizing? The reading service does nothing for Nightlight, right? From a financial perspective, it does everything for the readers and for people who need affordable reading services. Why can we do that? Because of the Kickstarter. When the Kickstarter is successful, then I can create things like that, support people, support an affordable reading service, and take almost zero money from it whatsoever. When I say almost, I mean, we take, like I said, maybe for every $1,000, we're taking 100, and that's purely to support the infrastructure of the reading itself, our website fees, the web person who's managing the scheduling, stuff like that. So, it's like, we're not making any money from that reading service, but we can do that because the Kickstarter allows us to do things like that. Because it's like, oh, we have success in this thing right here, so we don't need this thing to be successful. Do you see what I mean? So that's the philosophy behind everything we do at Nightlight. All right. So anyhow, Monique says, okay, I should actually do my job now instead of fundraising for Adam. Thanks, Monique. You're so sweet. That's great. All right. Anyhow, so head on over to the Kickstarter if you haven't yet. Now let's get into some Q&A. Oh, hi, Hilda. Hi. How are you? Are you here to kickstart me? Kickstart me with love and cuddles? You can see Hilda. There she is. Yeah. Okay. So I'll be happy to take your questions now. So any questions you have about astrology, anything you want to know about me as a content creator, any questions you have about any topics related to spirituality, metaphysics, astrological philosophy, technical astrological things, whatever you have, drop your comments, or your questions, I should say, into the comment section. And I'll be glad to answer them. How old is your dog? She's so cute. She's just over 2. She's a rescue. She's an English Mastiff. Her story is really sad. She was taken to the shelter and dropped off by a family who had to move, and their new rental did not allow dogs. And so they had to drop her off. Well, 3 days later, they came back, picked her up, decided, I don't know, I guess they changed their mind. And then 3 months later, they found her wandering the streets and were not able to get in touch with the owners ever. So she went through some serious abandonment with her first family. And, that's where we came in and kind of picked her up. Hilda, what are you looking at? You worried? What are you worried about? Come here. Oh, you hear mommy out there. Well, she'll settle down in a second. Ashley's sorting herbal medicines out in the other room, and she can hear her. Okay. Let's get into it now. So, could you speak on Uranus in the 7th house? This is a great thing. Yeah. So Uranus in the 7th can have so many meanings. And the one that people jump to right away is the delineation that people usually jump to is going to be the one that suggests that you'll never be able to have a committed relationship that won't be disrupted by betrayal or the need for freedom, that you won't be able to commit, or that someone you love won't be able to commit. there's certainly some truth to those, there's some truth in all rumors. There's some truth to that. There certainly is a pattern like that can play out with Uranus in the 7th. But often it's also about the need for a, like sometimes people with Uranus in the 7th are sort of sexually frustrated or repressed souls coming into the lifetime. And then as the lifetime continues, there will need to be breakthroughs with respect to sexual experience, a variety of sexual experiences that serve to help a person individuate by means of pleasure. Like, this is what pleasure looks like. These are the different ways that pleasure can be experienced with other souls. So sexuality becomes a pathway to freedom and growth. Other times, it's not that can't exist in a committed relationship either, but there's usually some need for experimentation and some need for sexuality and love to be experienced as liberating and as exciting and something that breaks us out of the monotony of life. And Uranus will sort of demand that there be major revolutions through love and relationships, that certain relationships will constitute major revolutionary tipping points within the lifetime. As a native born with Uranus in the 7th in Scorpio, for example, I was engaged, and then the engagement, I broke up with the person I was engaged to. And that was a major revolutionary moment in my life. Was an incredibly difficult breakup. And then in the process of that breakup, I met my wife, who treated me with some herbal medicine because I was really sick as I was going through the breakup. And then like 6 months later, I ended up teaching. She hosted a yoga retreat in the mountains of West Virginia. I ended up teaching astrology at the retreat. She invited me to teach. The rest is history. So, that was a Uranus. There was a Uranus transit. It was a transit to my natal Uranus happening at that time. So I think about Uranus a lot in the 7th with respect to, the major revolutionary shifts in the lifetime that come often through relationships. Those are a few things that come to my mind anyhow. All right. Yeah, she is sweet. Why would you say both benefics struggle in Virgo? Well, there's different reasons for each. One has to do with the exaltation scheme and the other, the domicile scheme. So when Jupiter is in the sign of Pisces, it's in its rulership. If you put it in either of the signs of Mercury, it's said to be in its exile. The basic reason for that is that Jupiter is a planet that is associated with the establishment of coherence. So the building of things that are many or diverse or disparate into one. There's a great hexagram in the I Ching, number 45, called Gathering Together. And if I'm getting that right, yeah. And it shows a gathering of energies and pooling together of resources into something coherent and unified. Then there's another one called Dispersion. I think it's 59, Dissolution, Dispersion. And it shows things that are whole breaking down into parts and flowing out in different diverse, divergent directions, more chaotic. But both are considered natural, creative, sacred movements of the divine, of the Tao. Mercury is much more like dispersion, doubt, questioning, analytics, breaking things down into their parts. Jupiter is more about the building of coherence and unity as kind of like fundamental energetics associated with the planets, like on an archetypal level. So if you put Jupiter into either of Mercury's signs, it goes into a space where it's trying to be something that is contrary to the environment that it's in. So that's why Jupiter struggles in Virgo. Venus struggles in Virgo for an entirely different rationale. And so we can't say that both benefics struggle there for one simple reason. The rationale for Venus has to do with her exaltation in Pisces, put her in the opposite sign of Virgo, and she's in her fall. And that has to do with the tension between Venus and Mercury. Mercury is exalted in Virgo and it's fall in Pisces. So Rhetorius, an ancient author, who I think might have been quoting Antiochus, another author anyhow, he says, why is it that at the place where Mercury is exalted, there Venus is fallen, and where Mercury is in its fall in Pisces, there Venus is exalted? He said the reason for this is that on an archetypal level, the sensual Venus and the intellectual have a kind of polar opposite quality. And so where the intellectual is raised up, the sensual declines, and where the intellectual declines there, the sensual is exalted. So one of the tensions for Mercury in Pisces tends to be imaginative, romantic, emotional thinking. That is not bad, right? There's so many beautiful souls with Mercury in Pisces. I think about Mercury and Pisces in some of the charts of some of the most intuitive people I've ever met, right? But when it comes to that detached, practical, grounded, earthy, rational, mercurial quality, it may lack some of those things. And so you'll also see some of the people who really struggle with being grounded, objective, clear, practical, organized, structured in their mind. It's because you're putting Mercury in the sign of Pisces, where you're looking at a sign that's very romantic and imaginative and unitive and sort of sensual and like that. It's a place of Venus and Jupiter, feminine, double-bodied sign of the fish, right? So, and then take Venus and put it in Virgo, and now it's in an environment that is dry, practical, analytical, thoughtful, conscientious, but in a very rational mental way. Which doesn't mean it's not thoughtful or conscientious or sort of pure. There's a real purity to the sign of Virgo that's really like beautiful. So, but Venus in Virgo may feel the tension or struggle with those mercurial energies, and therefore we say that Venus may struggle in Virgo. But they're just basic guidelines for understanding archetypal tensions. That's what dignities are. Once you understand that tension, then you have to be creative and thoughtful and intuitive with the way you apply it in every situation. So yeah, so that's why both benefics struggle in Virgo. It's a very good question. Here we go. What kinds of strategies do you use to get your books written? I don't mean publishing, I mean from idea in your mind to something that could be read and understood by someone else. That is a very good question. I've been writing since I was a little kid. When I was a little boy, I won several writing awards at both state and national levels, and was just always writing. My first several years of content creation that led to YouTube was daily written content, so, and I went through 2 graduate degrees in creative writing and read an enormous amount of literature. So it's a combination of practice over a long period of time, as well as reading a lot of good literature, like fiction, nonfiction, essays, memoir, poetry, plays, just getting a ton of reading. When you start reading with craft in mind, because you're also writing and learning how to write, those two things coming together over many years for most people turn into the ability to go from an idea or a concept into writing, writing chapters that come together into the form of a book. I say that because I don't like to blow smoke up people's ass. It's not something you can just sit down and learn how to do. It's something that really, for most people, requires, like anything. It's like, well, how do you write a piece of music and write an album? Well, you have listened to lots of music and you've played lots of music for some period of time, some longer than others. And then, you mimic that process that you're seeing in albums and songs, and you create something. Otherwise, my strategy is, I like right now I'm at the stage where the book is at a really critical point, because, I have an idea of the arc of the book that I start with. It's very conceptual, and it's very flexible, because I want the spirit to sort of move and be able to shape it as it goes. And so it's not like I know exactly what every single chapter is going to be, but I know sort of where it's all going. And then one of the things that I find that I have to do is I have to wait until within each new chapter until certain images and ideas sort of take shape in my mind. And I know when they're taking shape because I go, oh, that's what I'm going to write about in this chapter. I sort of know where the book is going, but I don't necessarily know where the next chapter is going. So once that forms, then I sit down and I start writing. And then that process, who knows how long it takes, because it might take me several times to write that chapter. The chapter may come out very easily, or it may be like, I've got one part of the chapter, but then I have to sit with until all of a sudden, oh, now I know where this next part is going. So every chapter is also sort of like a mini book. And then after the first draft is done, it's going back through and looking over all of that. So my first book that I wrote took me from the first draft to publication on the shelf was 6 years. I am in the second year of writing this book right now. This is year 2. And I think the first draft should be done within, 2025 for sure. I've only got 5 chapters left. I wrote 7 in the first year. I was very ambitious that I could do a chapter a month. No, that's a little slower than that, but that's okay. But thanks for asking. It's a fun thing to talk about. I love talking about writing. All right, let's see. I have a rescue dog, best breed of dog. They're very sweet. I love this one too. Your rescue dog was adopted twice in return. Now she's been with me 13 years. That's amazing. Really sweet. A couple years ago, you compared Cane Corsos to Scorpios, and I get it. Yeah, it's because it's like the dog that I deeply, I don't know. I've always just really been attracted to and love those dogs. And I'm very excited that we're bringing one into the family this next year. That's going to be exciting. Debbie Court says, the only thing to consider is whether you have learned anything this year through Adam's content. If you can honestly say you haven't, then you don't have to back the Kickstarter. Oh, thank you guys. All right, let's see. Book suggestions on planets' archetypal energies. Yeah, the number one best book that I could recommend for understanding planets' archetypal energies is Cosmos and Psyche by Richard Tarnas. What a fantastic job he does in that book. It's one of the all-time best books on astrology. The other content that I would highly recommend for just understanding archetypes and planets would be anything written by Liz Green. She's one of the great masters of psychological archetypal astrology. Honestly, read James Hillman. Everything written by James Hillman is about archetypes, and you'll see that there are so many connections to the planets in those books. Otherwise, I would for understanding planetary archetypes in a kind of cookbook way, like Ren Butler's Archetypal Universe is like next level cookbook, where it just gives you lists of significations for planets and combinations of planets from an archetypal standpoint. And it's somewhat, it's like it's got its limitations insofar as like he can't possibly capture every single thing under the sun, but he gives you really nice starting points to work with. And I've often read from his book on my channel. I'm reading Lord of the Rings currently. Have you ever looked into Tolkien's chart? Yeah, of course. Yeah. The Capricorn energy, that book is so deeply Capricornian. And that comes through with his sun in Capricorn in the 5th. Yeah. Adam Pavel. I don't see Adam Pavel in the chat. Someone said your question is a good one, but I'm not seeing an Adam Pavel question. Let's try to see if I can find it, but I have Uranus in 7th house, and I've had astro people hit on me thinking I'm into weird, kinky couple stuff. Because that's weird. All right. Let's see. What other questions you guys have? Can you describe more about using astrology in a way that doesn't harm your relationship with the oracular spirit? Yeah, there's a few basic pieces of advice that I would give to people. One is have a reason for communicating with a chart. Like, instead of sitting down with a chart and thinking that you're analyzing information, anytime you sit down with a chart, I want you to imagine that you're entering a cave, and inside of the cave, Yoda is sitting there with a candle. You're about to talk to someone. Anytime you look at a chart, you're talking to a living spirit. So don't look at charts without that simple recognition that what I'm looking at is a living language. It's like the coat of an animal, or like the undulating arms and colors of an octopus. Like you're talking to something that's alive. This is my perspective. So the main way to not harm that relationship is to be conscious of it. Because, I mean, think about it like this. If you have someone you love in your life, what's the easiest way to ruin that relationship? Forget about them. You know, relationships are maintained through remembrance. Devotion is remembrance. Think about the moon, right? The moon is the planet of devotion. Why? Because the moon is a constant circling and a constant mirroring. And that constant circular movement of the moon, along with the reflective nature of its light, was associated with memory and with nurturance. Just like a mother. A mother always keeps the children in mind on some ideal archetypal level. A mother circumambulates her children in everything she does. Or a parent. You could even think of it as a parent. It doesn't have to be a mother. A gardener circumambulates their plants, their garden. By circumambulate, I mean they have a way of walking in circles around it in their mind and heart. Just like the moon is constantly circumambulating. And they're aware of the constant changes that are happening. Right? So if you have a kind of reflection on the mood and the environment and the fluctuations that are happening all of the time, then you're someone who's staying like really closely connected to something. If you stay close to your feelings, your body, your moods, your digestion, you're going to feel better because you're going to know how to take care of yourself. If you develop a relationship with an oracle that treats it as something that's alive, and every interaction you have with it is something you are caring for, just like a human being, your plants won't die, your kids will love you, your lover won't feel abandoned because you're paying attention, because your life revolves around something that you love and care for. If you treat astrology that way, then you will not harm your relationship with the oracular spirit, even if the oracular spirit sometimes needs to adjust you, give you a lesson or an instruction or adjust an approach or refine a technique. It's not, you have a relationship with Yoda. You know what I mean? So if you tend that relationship like you tend anything else you care for, you can't harm it, because any more than you might, you can't harm your dog if you accidentally step on its foot. It's like, well, it knows that you care because 24/7 you're not stepping on its foot, you're caring for it. If you take a tone with your kid and you apologize, you have a huge amount of, grace credit built up in the psychic piggy bank because you normally care for it all the time. You're conscientious of it all the time. If you're someone who never cares for the oracle, you never care for a dog, or you never care for a lover, you're spaced out, you're not present, well, that's going to harm the relationship. But even if we make missteps or mistakes, if you're constantly tending for something, there's grace that's just built into that kind of exchange. Yeah, good question. Was there a significant transit that marked your return to writing more regularly? Yeah, so that would be Uranus, transiting Uranus, hitting my natal Venus by a square. Yeah, it's a good one. I'm watching with my mom. Could you speak to your Astrology for Complete Beginners course or astrology in general, so these topics aren't going so over her head? Yeah, sure. Well, if you're listening to astrology and you're new to it, it's normal for it to go over your head. So like sometimes I'll be, like at Christmas, I was talking to my wife's aunt, who I love dearly. And she said, sometimes I tune into your channel and there's certain things I can understand that you're saying. And then a lot of the things I just don't understand. So, I'm just not sure I understand astrology. And so people frequently have that problem where they start listening to astrology and they go, I can't understand it. But then they think that there must be something wrong with either astrology or themselves because they can't understand it. That would be like saying, if I put you in Mexico City and you don't know Spanish and you can't understand Spanish, that there's either something wrong with you or the Spanish language. There's not. It's just a very simple problem, which is that you don't know the Spanish language yet. So if you want to benefit from astrology, if you want to have a cool, interesting relationship with it where it really does speak to you, you have to take the time to get to know the language because it is a language. Taking that time to get to know the language for some people is not feasible because I don't have time. I'm not interested in learning something new. Totally get it. There's lots of ways to be spiritual that don't include needing to learn a whole new language, so just do those things, because at the end of the day, all astrology is meant to do is facilitate a meaningful spiritual experience with life. But if astrology is something that you want to learn more of, maybe because you want to connect with your sun, or maybe because you want to, it's interesting to you. It's something you're curious about. The Complete Beginner's course is going to give you about 10 hours worth of content that will acclimate you to the basic features of the language: houses, signs, planets, aspects, dignities. Well, these are the basic features of the language. And once they're explained to you in terms of just what they are, then when you hear people speaking astrologies, you're going to go, oh, I recognize what they're talking about. Can I understand all of it yet? No, but at least I know what they're talking about, right? And so then the goal is, if you have a basic introduction to the language, that if you keep listening to it, you start picking up on the language. Astrology for most people is a language acquisition process. Excuse me. And frankly, there's one of my sort of pet peeves, or I don't know, like it's a soapbox issue, is that there are way too many people that know, maybe, it's like if you could put it on a percentage level, maybe they understand about 25% of the language, and yet they think that they know 90. And there's just this weird, like, false confidence that exists in modern astrology, especially, that where people learn very little about the overall history, philosophy, technical dimensions of astrology. They know very little about it, and yet they may feel empowered as though they're an authority on the subject. Frankly, the same thing, as someone who owned a yoga studio for 10 years, the same thing exists in yoga. There's many people who, learn a little bit about yoga, and then, they think they know a lot more than they do. And one of the best things that can happen for people is to continue studying astrology so that you get a really clear sense of, oh, how do they put it? Now I know what I don't know. It's like, even myself, as someone who's been doing this for 15 years and has seen so many clients and studied and taught for so long, my understanding of the language and history of astrology is still, not that high. Like, it's like, it's functionally high, which means that I can do a lot with what I do know in serving people with readings and teaching, and I can train people to do astrology and stuff like that. But, it's a 2,000-year-old tradition. So you're also entering into, something like the entire history of fiction, or the entire history of philosophy. The history of astrology is thousands of years old, spans over many different languages, that was carried through so many different people in different eras, different stages of the development of the craft. So it's one of the vastest spiritual traditions on our planet. And so it's also very normal when you're coming into it to, to feel overwhelmed. But my advice for people is to embrace that overwhelm rather than seeking ultra simple explanations about things that don't really serve us in the end. It might be convenient to feel like everything is super simple in the beginning because it's overwhelming. But if you take time to get to know how rich and deep it is, and you let yourself let your head kind of go underwater and be like, holy shit, this is really big and vast, that it's humbling, and that will give you really a better platform to work from in the long run, which is why I encourage people to take our classes. It's 4 years worth of curriculum. People don't usually take 4 years to take it. It'll be 2 to 3 usually. But that process, at the very least, what I see it doing for people is giving you an amazing foundation and just a sense of how big and vast it is, so that you don't have false confidence. because that false confidence is a killer of anything really intuitive in astrology. So, yeah, good question. Let's see here. Do you have any thoughts to share about the Quaker tradition? I feel at odds with the Christians I encounter in my life, like I always live in the closet around them. Well, it's hard to find a Christian community that feels ecumenical, universal, open to other faith traditions, accommodating for as much spiritual diversity as you may have in your psyche, right? That's a challenge that I think more Christian communities need to take up, but it's easy for me to say. What I love about Quaker traditions, and I've gone to several Quaker communities here in Minneapolis, is that you walk in, you sit down, you all sit together in silence, connect with God or spirit in that silence, maybe listen to a few people share reflections or insights that come from that silence, and then everybody goes home. And I just love it. I love it that it's that simple. I love that the ritual is meditative, prayerful, and there's no preaching, there's no sermonizing, there's no scripture. It's just silent communion with the spirit. The Christ consciousness is what I would describe it as, that you're just communing with it. And you can go and if you don't experience silence that way, you can experience silence in whatever way you want. They're inviting of atheists. If you appreciate silence, just come and sit with us in silence. We think it's good for the soul. Even if you don't believe there's a soul, you just like silence, come sit with us. They're so open-minded. That's what I love about the Quakers. Of course, there's fanatics and, conservative and liberal, and there's all sorts of gradations, and, just go and sit with the Quakers sometime. It's amazing. Just sit in silence. So beautiful. That's what we mimicked for our ritual solstice gathering. We just sat in silence together. It was beautiful. What is your Mercury? Cancer. Mercury in Cancer. Okay. Here is the Kickstarter link again in the comments section. Where did you go to school for writing memoir? So I studied creative nonfiction in my master's degree from Central Michigan University. And I won thesis of the year for the graduate for all of the graduate programs. My book on ayahuasca was nominated for best thesis of the year that year, and I won, which was amazing. That was one of the coolest moments of my life, honestly. And then I went to Georgia College and State University in Milledgeville, Georgia, which is Flannery O'Connor's School of Creative Writing. And the school curates her home and museum that are right there in Milledgeville. And so I studied creative nonfiction there and wrote the second draft of that book, which would then be published a couple years later. So those are the places I studied creative writing. We need you on Spotify. I am on Spotify. You can find it under Nightlight Astrology. Let's see. Is there a reason for switching to Regiomontanus for Horary? It's purely because most Horary came through the quadrant-based era of astrology, like the medieval era where quadrant-based houses were starting to be used more regularly. And quadrant-based houses have very specific uses on a technical level within Horary. And so I was trained that way. And so I simply use what I was trained on. That's it. It's not that complicated. You could use another form of quadrant-based division for Horary. James Moran says, yesterday I asked if you could do a horary reading. You seemed open to it. Yeah, I did do several horary readings yesterday. If you want to hop on into the, when I do live readings today, James, in a little bit, you could hop in and I'd be happy to try to take your horary reading. We'll see what happens. But yeah. I have a rescue dog. He rescued me though. Oh, I love that. Yeah, that's great. Can you talk on interpreting charts for children? Well, remember, there's an important starting point, which is that generally children don't come for us for chart interpretation. So mostly we're interpreting charts for ourselves. And we have to be clear on that. When I'm going to sit down and look at my daughter's chart, what am I looking for and why am I there? If I'm an anxious parent, it's not a good reason for being there. What I mean by that is if I'm going because I'm afraid and I'm going to go look for bad shit because I'm in a worry mode, just stay away. But if I'm approaching it because, let's say, my daughter has a need for some particular kind of help, some particular behavior or something like that, right? And I'm thinking, as a parent, what do I do here? So that's a good approach, right? Because then we have a reason for being there that's rooted in concern in our role as a parent and something like that. Even if we want to get our charts generally read, our kids' chart generally read by someone, I don't recommend doing it once they're like a teenager. I recommend doing it when they're real young, because it can start to become a trespass when a soul is of a certain age to start looking at their chart, unless we have their permission. So I'm very hesitant around like teenagers and onward. But young children, 3-4 years old or just born, let's look at their chart. At that point, as an astrologer, what I'm there to do is provide an encouraging look at this soul, and not one that induces fear or more anxiety. You know what I mean? So that's critical. So tread lightly. Don't go with a lot of anxiety. Go with the idea that you're looking for some constructive insight. And also, I didn't read either of my kids' charts until they were a year old. I recommend that approach for anyone, but yeah. Let's see. Oh my gosh. Do you find that the music you enjoy is created by artists with similar complementary natal placements? That's a funny question. I never really paid attention to that. I didn't go looking for it or anything. But then I noticed that Robert Hunter, I think that's his name. Yeah, he's the lyricist and one of the main songwriters for most of the Grateful Dead songs, along with Jerry Garcia. And both Garcia and Hunter have placements in the sign of Cancer that are pretty close, if not right on my own. Hunter's Mercury is like identical to mine. So I think in the case of the Grateful Dead, I certainly saw a connection there that I thought was pretty cool, but I haven't really looked other than that. Okay, let's see. Okay, here's Adam's question, which I missed earlier. I was born clinically dead. My ascendant is at the last degree of Leo. This causes confusion about using whole sign versus coke. I feel like two different persons with two charts. Yeah, so there's not like one right way of doing this, okay? So if we're seeking some kind of absolute objective truth in this question, I don't think we're looking at it the right way. I would say that you have options with how you look at charts, right? Different house systems are different options, different lenses, different paradigms that have to do with the orientation of a language that's speaking to the soul, not the orientation of the soul itself. Okay, so we think we are the chart, and then we go looking for an objective answer about the chart that will objectively reflect who we are, and that's a mistake. It would be like looking for one objective form of reading the cards in tarot to be the most objectively accurate, and that's just not how tarot works. Neither does astrology. So what I would say is that, using whole sign houses comes with an entire paradigm for most of us. Indian astrology, you don't just use whole sign houses, you use an entire Vedic system of delineation techniques and philosophy. Hellenistic astrology, use whole sign, it's an entire world that you have access to. And the whole sign houses are just one part of an entire whole sign doctrine. That's a part of the entire language. And it goes far beyond just the simple orientation of the chart. I said this yesterday in the live stream. So what I would say is that if you're stuck on whole sign versus coke, you probably don't know enough about the entire paradigm around whole sign houses yet to really be able to feel or know the difference between those two charts that you're looking at. Once you do, I think you would probably feel a lot more comfortable understanding those differences, reflecting on them, and then figuring out which one you prefer. But when we frame things in terms of just a simple house choice between quadrant and whole sign, most of the way that question is being framed is coming from modern astrology. Because in modern astrology, we think of house systems as one versus the other. One is more accurate or inaccurate, or one is more reflective of the soul and one less reflective of the soul. Those are all, that way of thinking is all a product of modern astrology. In ancient astrology, because it comes from an oracular astral omen tradition, you can't just look at whole sign houses as a house choice in a binary with a quadrant-based house system. It's a lot more subtle and nuanced than that. And it's also a matter of symbolic orientation, not objective truth. So, I would just say, if you want to understand those differences, dive into Hellenistic astrology at a much deeper level, and then you'll be able to maybe compare the whole sign versus Koch versions of your chart. But in whole sign, it doesn't matter what degree is rising, that's your first house. So if it's the 29th degree of Leo, your first whole sign house is Leo. And we work with that. And then there's a whole way in which we read that. The significance of the ascending degree being in the final degree is really significant because it'll have a bound ruler that's very specific at the last degree. So we don't look at that as cuspy like a modern astrologer would. We just consider that to be Leo rising with the 29th degree as your ascendant. So yeah, but that's just a brief answer. It's a really good question and a really interesting situation, Adam. So I really appreciate you bringing it up. And I'm glad I finally caught that question because I didn't see it at first. Someone was mentioning it, but I didn't see it. How long it took you to become proficient in astrology and start reading for others? Well, I studied for probably like 2 or 3 years before I read people's charts. It was like 2007, and then I started reading charts in 2010. Like 2.5 years. And it was just like a private thing that was just for me because I was fascinated by it. I never thought I'd read for people. And then it just became my life. So yeah. At first, it wasn't like I wasn't reading for people because it just wasn't for anyone but me, And then it became something I started doing. Do you feel like we're heading towards dystopia? Everything feels so heavy here in America. Is it connected to Pluto and Aquarius? I don't. Here's the thing is that my view of history is, not one that I expect anyone to agree with, but it's, I think that time is cyclical. And I think that the material universe is without beginning or end. So it's like, again, I say this a million times on my channel, Plato's quote, time is the moving image of eternity. So I think that we go through light ages and dark ages cyclically. I think the universe expands and contracts. I think cycles of birth and death and rebirth are perpetual and eternal. And light and dark is a play that's moving through all ages and stages of life. And so I don't care where we're heading. I really don't. It's not that I don't care for suffering. Of course I do. But I just trust God. I'm like, if we're going toward a dark age, then just let me do what I can to be a light. If we're going toward a dark age, then let me do what I can to live through it, to persevere, to have faith and trust, to stay with the light in my heart and to be a light for others. If we're heading toward a golden age, then thank you and let me be a light. Don't let me be so blinded by the gold of the light age that I forget the simple, humble truths of the heart that have meant so much to me so far. So like, are we headed for a light age or a dark age? It's like, when I say I don't care, it's not like I don't care about people or I don't care about what's happening. It's that I trust wherever we're heading, and so I don't think about it. I don't anticipate it. I don't get anxious about history because I believe that I'm eternal and I believe everything and everyone is eternal. And I don't believe there's anything at stake in the ultimate sense of things. So the dramas of light and dark that play out on the stage of life, I'm here for. I'm here for them. We just had someone in our lives almost die recently of a heart attack. They were resuscitated by CPR and miraculously lived. It's like one of the first thoughts I had was, didn't see that coming. wouldn't have thought someone at this age and stage of life could just go in a blink like that. And I also wouldn't have anticipated that they would have been kept alive, through CPR and still be with us. So I can't put myself into the position of being so certain about anything that's going to happen or where anything is heading. All I know is that in the darkest experiences that I've ever had in my life, and in the darkest, states of consciousness that I've ever experienced, say in my ayahuasca experiences. So some of the darkest spaces I've ever visited have been in those ceremonies. I was okay. My soul came through. The transmigration of the soul to me is a real thing. So I can't spend a lot of time fearing death and darkness, because I believe that they are merely parts of a process that's taking place in life. So I just trust the way that things are happening and try to stay humble and just stay in my lane, doing what I can to maintain the light in me and share it, the best I can through what my service is, what my dharma is, which is astrology. Okay. This is a great question. Do you have a favorite planet? Venus, maybe. I really like Venus. It's my ascendant ruler. I don't know. Okay. Adam is really bringing it, guys. Let's make sure his Kickstarter gets the go in one day. Yeah, you know what? We are at, as of the time I'm doing this, 1,328 backers. Let's take another moment to plug the Kickstarter here. We'll take a few more questions and we'll head into some birth chart readings. So we're at 1,937 backers needed minus 1,328. We need 609 backers. 609 backers in 47 hours. We have 47 hours left in our campaign. 609 backers is a shitload of backers that we still need. I'm a little nervous. I really am. This is definitely the closest call we will ever have had as a Kickstarter. So you guys could all do us a solid over at Nightlight by helping us get there. I'm going to post the the link to the Kickstarter campaign into the live stream, and then you will find that link also on the website, nightlightastrology.com. If you like if these questions and answers give you some good things to chew on and help you work out your own thoughts about things in astrology or spirituality, consider giving $5. It really helps us get there. Everything at this point is just a matter of getting people to chip in any amount whatsoever between now and 47 hours from now. All right. All righty. I am going to get to the birth chart portion. Some people are asking about that. I'll get there shortly, so just hang tight. Someone asked me this yesterday. How do you know what your dharma is? Yeah. Well, what I will say is that I think that I'm going to, offer you some philosophical speculation here, but I think that the climate and current that we live in spiritually is not conducive to knowing what your dharma is very easily. We are bombarded by images of what you ought to look like, what you ought to feel like, what you ought to purchase, what you ought to have, what you ought to want, what you ought to be doing, what success looks like, what happiness looks like. And because we're being bombarded by those things over and over and over again, and we are receptive, sensitive souls that say, okay, I'll consider what impressions are coming into me. Like I'll consider it because we're sweet people, that overwhelms us. And it makes it hard for us to really clarify and discern and discriminate among these things. What am I? Who am I? What do I have to give? What's natural to me? Is it my dharma to play an instrument? Okay, but art doesn't pay, and you got to pay the bills and you got to do this or that. And a lot of us, maybe our dharma is to play an instrument, but we grow up at a time, place, and circumstance in history that doesn't pay artists. So then we say, well, what's the point? I can't survive doing it, right? There's a lot of things that are built in for us that make it difficult for dharma to be discerned or to be acted upon. And I don't think a lot of those things are not necessarily our fault. And so it's confusing because we also have a sense of, if I don't know what my dharma is and I'm not doing it, I'm failing somehow. But it's also our moment. If you consider the ages and stages of life, some traditions in India would say that we're in the Kali Yuga. Some would say we're not, whatever. But if we were, one of the conditions of the Kali Yuga would be that dharma is missing. Like dharma is not here. The dharma is lost. So I think if that is true, and I don't know if it is or not, but if it is true, how does that make it easy to know what your dharma is? And I would say that the biggest blessing in my life is my wife and my kids, right? And then next to that, it is that I have a job that I feel is in touch with who I really am and that I like to do. Those are the biggest blessings of my life. And I feel the reason that they're the biggest blessings is because in working with so many people over the years, I've found that it's exceedingly rare to feel like you kind of know who you are and you are able to do something that you love. Like it's precious, and I don't take it for granted. And that's also why I feel really responsible to make sure that the blessing that I have in being able to do something I love is being given to people generously so that other people can do things that they love and find things that are meaningful to them, making sure it's accessible. So it's not an easy question, right? The other thing is that we can use our birth chart to help us discover what our dharma is, which is one of the great purposes of astrology. It's one of the masterclass topics we have for the year ahead is, what is my dharma? We're going to be looking at houses 1, 9, and 5 as the dharma houses in our birth charts, which can give us a lot of insight. And frankly, sometimes that's all we need is some clues, some hints. So I have hope that, astrology can help us with this as well. All right. Let's see. Are you going to go do an old school marathon and stay on 24/7 until you hit the total? No, because Ashley and I are going to see the Bob Dylan movie as a date night, so I can't. I'm just kidding. There's no way I'd last, but I'm really excited to go see the Bob Dylan movie, so I can't stay on. I don't know if you guys, I think it's called A Complete Unknown, something like that. It's with Timothy Chalamet. He's playing Bob Dylan. I'm really excited to go see it. My bridge to Bob Dylan was the Grateful Dead because they really love Bob Dylan. And so my wife has slowly conquered my musical heart with the Grateful Dead and Bob Dylan, it's not that I didn't like them. I like so much classic rock, but I just never got into them. And now all of a sudden, yeah. And by the way, someone sent us a big box of Grateful Dead stuff, like amazing gear, probably from like Shakedown Street for Christmas. There's no name on the box. And I'm like, well, great. Now I don't know who to say thank you to. Not that it was, I don't know, just that random, like, we still haven't figured out who sent it to us. All right, let's see here. Yeah, Sophia. So I explained this earlier, but I'll say it again. We haven't yet met our income goal. So our income goal is to match or beat what we did last year or the year before. So we fall within a range of income that helps us establish our budget for the year ahead, right? So we can project what we can do based on if we do what we did last year. So how did we work the budget that we got from the Kickstarter last year? How can we work it again this year if we fall into that same range? So we set our goal with the hope that we can work with the same budget because we were successfully able to work with it last year, right? So it's like that. So our bare minimum for this Kickstarter campaign was set so that we don't lose everything if we don't get the exact number we need, because it's all or nothing funding. So if we project a certain number of backers so that we can build the support for the Kickstarter itself as the subscriber total on the channel goes up. So for example, we've gone up 12,000 subscribers since last year's Kickstarter. The hope is that we'd be able to meet our backer support number from last year with that many more new subscribers, or outdo it by a little bit, right? And then we know that if we get that many backers, we should fall in a comfortable range that mirrors something from the last 2 years, or somewhere in between the last 2 years. Obviously it'd be great if we went above the last 2 years, but we work with it in that range. And we know that if we get to that backer total, we should be in a similar range. So that's how it works. All righty. Let's see here. Is there a blurb or just a link for promoting sharing Kickstarter with friends? Yeah, you can find the link. I'll put the link into the comment section again, but you can also find it on the website, nightlightastrology.com, and just send people the link. If you're going to post it on Instagram or something, we super appreciate that. What happens if you don't make your backer goal? Well, if we don't make the backer goal, but still end up in the financial range, that should be fine, right? However, there's some level of reflection that I'll need to do if we've added 12,000 backers, but not gathered a similar amount of support. That's something that I don't know what to make of that, but I'll sit with it and reflect on it if that's what happens. And it's just good. It's just useful information. But if we hit our financial total and we don't have the exact backer number, that'll be fine. We'll have the budget we need, which is all that really matters. But the backer total is important to me because it reflects the development of a community of support for the channel and the content. And I think that's important. Do you have a favorite sign? I have a lot of preference toward Cancers and Tauruses because I have Cancer. I'm Cancer Sun and Mercury and Taurus rising, and then my wife's a double Taurus and Cancer rising. So I just get along really well with Cancer Taurus people, Capricorn people too. A little bit of Scorpio. I like the spice of Scorpio, to be honest with you. All right. That's a fun question. It's so subjective. Who knows? All right. Let's see here. It's a great movie. You'll enjoy it. Oh, good. That's cool. First Grateful Dead show was with Bob Dylan, 1987. That's awesome. That's great. Just became a backer with what I could afford today. I hope you make it. Thank you, Sophia. And that's really it. A $5 donation, as I've said a million times, helps as much as any other. At what point did you check your wife's chart? Did she ask for a reading? You guys are going to laugh at this, but the very first time I met my wife was that, okay, so there was a woman who had a reading with me who was from Minnesota, and her roommate was Ashley, and they were both from Minnesota originally. They were living on the East Coast, but they were both from Minnesota. So she said, Ashley, you've got to get a reading with this guy, Adam. He's an astrologer. He lives in New York City. They were living in DC. And he works with plant medicine because Ashley's an herbalist and has a background with psychedelics like I do. And she's like, he's from Minnesota. You'd like him. So I did a reading for her. Oh my God. I was like, I'm an ethical person. I don't, I'm not going to hit on someone I'm doing a reading for, but I liked her so much. So, yeah. So after the reading, we continued communicating via email and then stayed in touch on Facebook. And then one day, I got really sick because I was in the process of a really bad breakup. When I did the reading for her, we were in the process of the breakup too. And it took several months because we were living together. I don't know if you've ever had to live with someone before they can find a new place, or you can find a new place. You still have to live together, but you're broken up. It's hell. It was just really brutal. At least for me, it was. Anyway, so she ended up doing a session for me as an herbalist because I got really sick. I mentioned that earlier. And then like months later, but I liked her chart right away. She's super fiery, a bunch of planets in Aries, connect well with some fiery parts of my chart, and then her double Taurus energy, and she's feeding me plant medicine. She's like sweet, but fiery. I just really liked her. So yeah. Sid says, I think the backer number is important because it represents the reach you have versus just the money each person donates. Exactly. That's the thing, is we want to build a community of support year by year, as well as the actual landing in a financial range that's doable. Like, they both mean a lot to me and to us as a team. But yeah. All right. Did you cast a horary for your Kickstarter? I did not. I leave this in the hands of the gods. Like, they've supported me. every step of the way. 11 Kickstarters, you know, we've been successful. So it's like, I'm just going to leave it in hands bigger than my own, and I'm not going to stress about it. Yeah. So what we'll do now is I'm going to switch over to reading some birth charts. So if you have a birth chart you would like me to read, here's what to do. Email us your time, date, location of birth, and anything you'd like to talk about to grabbed@nightlightastrology.com. And I will send you a link to join me live in the studio. And then we'll go from there. So by the way, we are now down to just 601 backers needed with 47 hours left. That's great. So send to grabbed@nightlightastrology.com. Like, look, I will be glad to, this is really important because people mess this up every single time. I'll be glad to read your chart, but you have to pay attention when I send you the link to log in. You gotta click on the link and come join me. Every time I send links to people and then they never show up. Okay. Okay. I'm going to send some links to join. Okay, Lorena, I just sent you one. If you're listening, make sure you check your inbox and spam. Okay, James with the Horary. I got you. I'm sending you a link to join for that Horary question you had earlier. That's a good one, and I'll tell you right away. He's got a Horary for a missing animal, and that one of the toughest types of Horaries that exists. So you're really going to put me to the test here. We'll see how we can do. Let's see here. All right, we're going to have maybe a couple more people come in. Brianna says, this is my 6th attempt. Dear sweet Brianna, it is your 6th attempt and you did not give me your birth time. So, you know, you got to put all the data in there for me. I'd love to have you on, but if you don't have your birth time, I can't get you on. Okay, here we go to Amy. I've just sent you a link to join. And let's see. All right, Diane. I told you I'd try to get someone who's maybe of 1 or 2 generations above the 30-somethings that have been coming in. So try to get someone in there like that. Aha, there you are, Brianna. You sent me your time. Good on you. Okay, now I'm sending you a link. Now you're going to join. We're going to be good. Okay, Lorena, you're up first. Can you hear me?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. I'm excited.
Yeah, totally. Let me just pull up your birth info here. Can you tell me your date of birth, please?
November 8th, 1983.
November 8th, 1983. Time?
2:15 p.m.
And location?
Cuenca, Ecuador. That's Cuenca. Cuenca, Ecuador.
Okay, perfect. So I have you as a Pisces rising. Does that sound right?
That's right.
Okay. Now I've got a little bit of feedback coming through your speakers, so I'm going to mute you while I'm talking and then unmute you when I'm not talking. Does that sound okay? Okay, perfect. Lorena, but before you go on mute, tell me what we can talk about today that would be most helpful for you.
Well, two things. One, I've been having some career conversations, and I'm wondering if something might open up for me within the same company. I'd like to stay in the company, but I don't like the job I'm doing, and so I'm trying to switch that up. And then romantically, I've been single for a year and a half, and I think that, yeah, I'm curious if there's hope in the horizon there.
Yeah. Okay, good. Let's look at some transits that could. No, are you applying for a promotion or different position within your company? Is that what I was understanding?
Sort of. I had a very informal conversation with somebody that might have a position sort of open up from nothing, like a new thing that may open up in the company.
Do you know when it would be opening?
No.
So not even like a sense of like within 5 years from now, or
no,
3 months,
within a few months, within a year.
Okay, perfect. That really helps. I'm going to mute you now. Okay, you can do it. Perfect. Okay. So you can see here that we have some interesting things happening. I'll get to the love question too, but one thing that I would just point out really briefly is that Venus and Saturn are going to conjoin on your ascendant in mid to late January. If the position represents more responsibility and a greater weight that you would be carrying, but that you'd be sort of happy to take on, that could be really fitting for Venus Saturn conjoining on your ascendant. And another reason that we may consider that to be what's taking place is that we're also seeing these two planets squaring your midheaven and squaring your natal Jupiter. So the ruler of the midheaven, that kind of congregation of planets up there. So I would look for this, mid to late January. This is around January 18th, 19th. I wonder if that might be when you hear back about this position. I think there's a case to be made that this transit could deliver good news. Saturn on the ascendant can also be difficult. I like that Venus is there. So even if you don't get the job, I wonder if there's some consolation that comes with it. Like once you hear about it, you go, oh, maybe it's something I didn't really want, or that wouldn't have been the ideal fit. But either way, I would look for this to potentially resolve itself right around this time, around mid to late January. Let's go forward a little bit though, because there's another series of events that I think could shake things up for you, sort of around finances and money, and maybe your career. You're going to have Venus retrograde in your second house. That is one of the Arta houses, one of the houses associated with work, money, cultivation of skills, resources, development of your work in the world. So a Venus retrograde in that house, followed very closely, by the way, by a Mercury retrograde in that house, suggest that there is some transformation of circumstance taking place with respect to things like money and resources, and maybe skill acquisition or something like that. This is something that then continues as the sun crosses into Aries. We then get a solar eclipse. This is March 29th, a solar eclipse in your second house with an exalted sun in Aries. The next day, Neptune crosses into your second house. So there's, in other words, quite a bit of emphasis on your second house in the month of March. I would take that as a sign that let's do one scenario, which is you get the job. That January news with Saturn and Venus on your ascendant maybe gives you a position of greater responsibility within the company. It's exciting. This could be about the shifting of your financial status in March, just after starting the job. A renewed or different set of resources changes things in your life somehow. On the other hand, it could be that if you don't get the job, these retrogrades could signify something else coming up. Maybe a different revenue stream or a different opportunity, a change in financial status. That could also, if it's a change in financial status that you don't like, maybe that starts a process of shifting or reorienting you to a different company or a different job or a different title or something. So I think we have a few transits here, in other words, in the next couple of months that indicate, like, oftentimes people will, like, there's a job coming up, there's a possible for a title change in the company, and maybe it's that's coming, but it could also be just a sign or symptom of a deeper level of change that's about to happen with respect to work and money. So I would expect that you would really see things shifting and opening March, April, May, as those Aries planets and effect of the eclipse take place. So just trust that process and know that whatever the results of this job are, there's a bigger series of changes that appear that they're coming if you don't get it, When it comes to love, you're in a really interesting window of time where you're in the process of a Neptune opposition to your natal Venus. So you can see, for example, right here is Neptune at 28 degrees opposing Venus at 29. Can you see that okay? Okay, good. So that opposition perfects. This is right about, oops, here we go. This is the middle of March. So during that Venus retrograde, all Venus retrogrades can bring about changes with respect to love and relationships. At the outset of the Venus retrograde, Neptune also opposes your natal Venus. And you have the south node of the moon hovering right over your natal Venus. This would suggest to me that there is some resolution of an old karmic pattern coming about with respect to love and relationships in the next couple of months as well. I don't know what that means. Like, if you're single, it could mean that there might be people coming into your life, but they're going to be maybe like a test. You look and you go, you know what? I know where this one would go. No thanks. But that can really be a way in which we bring completion and closure to a chapter of our life, which then opens the opportunity for new things to come. You're about to enter into a year and a half of eclipses in your 7th house, 2 eclipses this year in your 7th house, one in March, one in September. So could it be that part of this year is spent wrapping up an old karmic cycle and making sure that it's done? At the same time, when that happens, that often is accompanied by new things that come up and offer us the opportunity for a totally new story. If we go forward later in the year, we're going to see that Neptune retrogrades, and it comes back to that 29th degree. Now, Saturn's also going to be opposing your Venus this year a couple times, right? So a lot of emphasis on that Venus. Neptune opposing the Venus comes back in November. That is just 2 months after another eclipse in your 7th house in September. So there's a lot of action around love and relationships this year with both Venus and Saturn, with both Saturn and Neptune opposing your natal Venus, 2 eclipses in your 7th house, the Neptune-Venus opposition happening under Venus retrograde, right? So I suspect that this is a year of healing and letting go of old things with the signatures of the South Node eclipses in the 7th house. But there is also a solar eclipse in the 7th house. I would say more like the latter part of the year, as Saturn and Neptune are sort of finishing up with their oppositions to Venus. Either late 2025 or early part of 2026, you're going to be in a very different era with respect to love and relationships. It's like a cleansing or something like that that seems like it's taking place this year. That's my best guess. So on that note, I feel like the things you are naturally concerned with, the best thing you could take from this is to know that there are a lot of astrological transits around these areas: work, love. It's a big year for both of those subjects. So just trust the process, because I think you're going to be in a good space with both of them. Early part of the year, March, especially for work, that all that emphasis on the 2nd house. like we said at the beginning, you might even get news with the Venus-Saturn conjunction on your ascendant in mid to late January. We'll see about that. But let me know how things go, okay?
Will do. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
May I ask a burning question?
Oh, sure.
I'm just so curious why you were looking at Neptune opposing Venus on the love aspect. I wouldn't have thought of Neptune being related to that.
Yeah, well, anytime that you have a major transit to Venus from a slow-moving planet, Venus's natural signification is love. You also have Venus in the 7th house of marriage. And so any kind of slow-moving transit to Venus in the 7th from anywhere from Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, or Pluto will create the opportunity for a serious change in that karma of the birth chart. And so when you see oppositions too, and it's a fallen Venus in the 7th, you've got Saturn opposing it, you've got Neptune opposing it, you've got 2 eclipses there. There's something that has probably been painful or difficult around love and relationships is sort of looking to resolve itself this year. And that can mean a lot of different things, but that's why I'm sort of saying in the big picture, just trust the process, because that the emphasis on that Venus this year is probably going to bring you into a new space with love and relationships, and maybe some testing in terms of not falling into prior patterns or old patterns that haven't worked for you.
Love it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, glad to help, Lorena. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
You have a good day. Okay, awesome. That was a fun one. James, I'm going to come to you in a little bit here. Let's bring Leah on. Hey, Leah.
Hi.
Is it Lee or Leah?
It's Lee, but you
Okay.
could say, hey, you, and I'll still respond.
That's cool. Thanks for being here. Really appreciate it.
I've been taking your classes for the last couple of years. I'm just way behind because Pisces, Mercury, and
life happens. It is all good, and you're exactly where you need to be in your process. I'm sure of that. Okay, let's see here. So I'm going to put your chart up on the screen. Tell me your date of birth.
March 13th, 1984.
And the time?
11:04 a.m.
And the place?
Tyler, Texas.
Okie dokie. So I have you as Gemini rising. Does that sound right?
That's correct.
All right, great. I'm going to put your chart up on the screen. Tell me what we want to talk about.
So I feel like my moon and my 6th house have pretty much ruled my entire life. I grew up in chaos. I have a deep mother wound that still continues. I noticed at a young age, I started wondering, like, why are my parents like this? And I noticed that I kind of acted like my mother. So I've spent my whole life trying to stop that, the ancestral pattern of my mom being her mom, being her mom. In the process, my health is just, I mean, I never had a chance. My nervous system was shot before I was even born from all the fighting and yelling she does. She has borderline personality disorder. One minute she loves me, the next minute I'm a horrible, horrible person. And as you can imagine, that ruins your self-esteem to have your mom with you. So,
yeah, of course.
So my original question was if I would ever find love, or am I just destined to, was this like what I was supposed to do, is work this hard, and my whole life was meant to just break the pattern so that my kids would no longer have to suffer?
What a deep question. Yeah, that is that's coming right from the heart. I can feel that, right? It's like there's just been this burden, and it's been really hard and heavy. Will it lighten? Will I find love? And now let me ask this. Do you have kids?
2.
You just said, yeah, 2, right? So I'm guessing from what you've said, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you're not with the dad anymore.
No, but we co-parent just fine.
Okay. So what you're asking about is, will I find a soulmate? That's kind of the question.
Basically, my entire life, I've always had that fantasy of, maybe it's my Pisces sun, I don't know, but that being married and like having a family and just being loved and loving that person, not in an attachment way, but just having my best friend and my partner, and like, it's just not happening.
Well, let me ask you this question. When you say not in an attachment way, what do you mean by that? I just want to make sure I understand.
All my relationships have been, once I was able to like reflect more, especially using astrology, and see that I was always dating my mother in a male form.
I see. Yeah. That happens to us. Isn't it weird? It does. It's like,
Trying,
yeah.
trying to find for approval finally, subconsciously.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that happens. Let's take a look. I'm going to cast a horary chart for you to demonstrate a horary theory that people have been curious about. We'll look at your birth chart too. So we're going to look in a horary chart about ever finding love. We have a kind of a broad technique that we apply. So we're going to use you as the ascendant ruler, which is Venus. Can you see that?
Uh-huh.
We're also going to give you as the moon. And then in a chart like this, I assume that you're interested in men.
Yes.
Okay. I would always ask, just everyone has different orientations. So we're going to give the seventh house ruler to a potential spouse or soulmate. We're also going to give the sun. And in a chart like this, we give the ascendant ruler and the moon to the woman. And if Venus isn't taken, usually the woman will get Venus too, but Venus is the ascendant ruler. So you get Venus and the moon, a man gets Mars here and the sun. So what we're seeing here at the outset of this question is the moon about to conjoin the sun, which is a picture of a man and a woman coming together. A very lovely, beautiful horary that suggests to me that like the first level of the question is, yes, there's going to be another marriage in your life. I feel very confident that this horary is showing eventually another marriage. No marriage is perfect. I can't promise it's like, it's like the Notebook.
I've never been able to experience what that's like.
Oh, okay. I see. You weren't married. It was just a partner. Okay, that's cool. But either way, I see a marriage here, or even a life partnership. Doesn't have to be a marriage per se. You know what I mean? But that's a really good, strong picture of a marriage. So let's start there, and we'll assume the horary is giving us a good beat on it, and then let's take a look at your chart and see if we can't time out something around the topic of marriage here. Give me just a second. I'm going to pull up a bi wheel so that we can explore this. Now, I expect an invite or at least an update if I'm right. You got to keep me informed. And if I'm not right, I tell people this all the time. But if I mess this horary up, you're looking at 70. You're retired. You're reading books by yourself in a porch or something, and you go, that astrologer, that dick. Then you just send me a message and I'll give you a free horary, and we'll try to I'll try to get a chart right for you. Okay. So can you see the birth chart on the screen now?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So what we want to do is we want to find meaningful transits to the planet Venus, planets in the seventh house ruler. Those are going to be our go-tos with respect to things like love. Now that conjunction was 2 degrees off, which looks somewhat imminent to me. So in a horary chart, you get a feel for timing, not an exact timing. That's almost always how it works with horary. What I really like in this chart that I find super interesting is in June, coming up really soon, you have, where is it here? Uranus squaring your Venus. Now, what's interesting about that is that just a couple of weeks later, Uranus, along with transiting Venus, will enter your first house, where your whole sense of who you are and your purpose for being here starts to go through a Uranian shakeup, coming right on the heels of a Uranus square to Venus. Now that Uranus square to Venus is going to then return later in the year. So if we go forward through its retrograde, it comes back into the 12th house and squares Venus by, December. It kind of stations, sits down, goes forward again through the square in March of 2026, comes back through the first house. So there, one case that we could make here would be that if there is a partnership coming in, a meaningful partnership, let's call it, that's somewhat imminent, I would track it along the next year's Uranus-Venus square, especially with Uranus hitting that 12th, going from the 12th house into the first. This also tells me, though, because it's coming from the 12th house, that some unconscious dynamics around love, sex, marriage, relationships may be a part of this process. It can be hard to open your heart to someone. It might be that you start dating, but it's not the first person, it's the second or third person that's the right fit. So just remember that that 12th house might mean there's a little bit of exploring, healing, and a little bit of work to be done, but that you're in maybe a season in which there's a revolution around love that's about to occur, right? So you got to kind of keep that in mind, that the 12th house can mean there's going to be some unconscious shadow work that has to be done around this topic, but that doesn't mean that nothing good will come from it. It just means that there's a layer of work that has to be done with it. That's usually what the 12th house will indicate in a situation like this. Now, the other thing that I will point to is we get right about, where am I? Sorry. Okay, here we go. And this eclipse, this is an eclipse that's taking place. Oh, your kitty.
I know.
Okay, you can see here's an eclipse that is taking place, a lunar eclipse, which is taking place in the 10th house in August of 2026, while the North Node is on natal Venus. During this time, you are also in the culminating moments of Pluto opposite your moon. So in the backdrop of the Uranus square to Venus, you're going through a lengthy process of Pluto opposing your moon. Why is that significant? First of all, we see constant activity around Venus stretching all the way through 26, while you're also in the midst of a Pluto moon dynamic. And for you, you've dated your mom. That's the way you put it. So I'm just saying it that way. If you dated your mom, and there is, for the moon is one of the planets related to marriage and family life and home and our emotional needs. And there's a deep tie-in between the moon and love and marriage. It's not the romantic dimension, it's the emotional attachment, bonding, kind of that side of relationships, you could say. Well, Pluto is excavating all sorts of material around that. At the same time that Uranus is squaring Venus, at the same time, there's an eclipse with the North Node landing on Venus, right? So you can see the intersection between mother, family, ancestral karma being sort of transformed, healed, purified, purged, but you can see it connected to the topic of love and sex and romance with the simultaneous transits to Venus. So between now and, if we fast forward this a little bit, let's go. So you can see Pluto's going to get all the way down to about a 2 degrees of an opposition to the moon by late 26. So that's about 2 years worth of a process that will be constantly pinging off from Venus and constantly pinging off from the moon. And those are the two planets that you brought up right away, love and mom, right? So I would say you got about 2 years in front of you where I would guess a new partnership will come through, but this new partnership is going to bring up some heavy stuff. As you are well aware, there's a lot there for you. I believe that this is very promising, but it will require you to kind of dig deep and let go of the parts of this that you need to let go of, heal some things, open your heart to some new things, be very discerning. You want to guard your heart, but let your heart heal and open to another person. That's a difficult, tightrope to walk. But I think over the next 2 years, that's exactly what you're going to be doing. And I think you're going to be successful. I really do, because I believe in people. I believe that when people want love, they want to grow, they want to change, that's the only necessary part. The universe facilitates the rest in time.
Yeah, good.
Well, I hope that this was useful for you and that you get some encouragement from this.
I did. That makes it reinforces what I kind of already have been feeling, especially since my mom just had another flare up, and now I'm like, okay, I have to just.
She's sick?
No.
Like an episode. Yeah. Yeah. Here's the thing is that the Pluto moon dynamic is, I want you to imagine that when it comes to the karma around these kinds of things, right? Like one of the things we know about borderline personality as someone who I know very well about that because there's some of that in my family. So I'll just say that. But one of the things that happens with people who are suffering from that, what you want to call the disorder, I don't know exactly how it's phrased these days, but is the incredible, like, otherworldly radar when it comes to the potential for being rejected. You know, it's like, so someone new is coming into Leah's life. You can imagine how she may respond to that. The level of threat, the weird way in which projections may occur, and hostility may be, you know, you may experience hostility or aggression or antagonism from someone who isn't totally stable, who's really suffering, and who sees a new person as a threat to the constellated patterns that they're used to. And so the little I know about that particular issue, the more I would say that probably what we're looking at here is when someone new comes into your life, that there's new tools and resources and new confidence and support to deal with that. But there may also be a heightened level of, you know, dysfunction that comes about. That's pretty normal when there's a way, there's a weird way in which the best thing that can happen for people who have their some psychic hooks in us is for other people to come in, which makes it harder for them to have that dependency, but then they may lash out in the process. And we have to be strong enough to set boundaries which I'm sure you've already done many times, but you know, it's like you have some work in front of you, I'm sure, with your mom and all of this, you know, but you've got everything you need inside of you. I'm sure of that. You've got what you need.
Do you think because my natal is moon square Pluto that this meant like my whole life is supposed to be like this? Like,
not your whole life, but a significant portion already has been, right?
Yeah, my whole life. Yeah.
So what does it mean that Pluto is coming for the first time in your life to activate this by hard aspect?
That I'm finally going to break free and not care anymore.
There we go. That's the attitude. That's
Yeah.
all you need. You know,
Feels different now.
Yeah. And it could this bring things to a head and make it feel like it's worse than it's ever been? Yeah. But it's kind of like that whole, it's always darkest before the dawn thing. I mean, sometimes you got, you know, things have to reach that eruptive cathartic space where it feels like critical mass, and it may feel like, oh, it's never been this bad, but that's often what happens when a constellation is about to break and, you know, burn off.
I can promise you it could never be worse than it already has. Like there's
yeah.
Like,
yeah.
No, my son did die and come back to life, like, and she's involved, like, so I promise it can never get worse. So that's why I feel like in my heart lighter, and like I think
Good.
this is the end of it.
Good.
I hope.
Yeah, we're all going to hope that for you too.
I'll let you know.
Yeah, let me know. Keep me informed. You show up on these live streams all the time. It's so nice to have you in the community.
Thank you so much.
All right, take it easy, Leah. Bye. All right. Awesome. All right, James, let's see if we can find your cat.
All right.
How are you doing?
Doing okay. It's a little tough to lose a pet, but
yeah, of course. Now I think that tell us the story just so everyone's kind of aware of it.
Yeah, sure. So we have a cat named Dusty that is diabetic, and my wife and I went for a month to India, and we had a cat sitter, house sitter here. And then just the day before we got back on the 26th, the cat was outside, and as it was coming inside, maybe, I don't know, people light off fireworks and stuff for Christmas. So it was the night of the 25th. It ran away, and then it just never came back, which is odd because it usually comes back and it needs its medicine and whatnot. And so, you know, we're kind of like walking around the neighborhood, putting up signs and stuff, but you know, the horary angle is attractive to me. So, yeah.
How long has the cat been missing?
It's like it's 4 days now. I think this is the 5th day, maybe.
Okay. And it's diabetic?
It's diabetic, yeah.
And so the question is, where is the cat? And also maybe the question is, has the cat passed?
Yeah, exactly. Kind of where it is, even if it has passed, can we retrieve it? Is there some landmark or something like that?
Yeah, of course. Okay. Can you see the chart on the screen?
Yep.
All right. Now, remember, James, I will tell you this. I have a pretty good track record with at least determining if the cat is alive or not.
Sure.
Location of missing people or animals is very difficult. There's a few like wild success stories in my career that are pretty cool, but there's a lot of, I can tell you if they're going to come back or not, or if they're passed or not, but I can't tell you where they are. Because it's like trying to find a needle in a haystack, looking at a chart and trying to intuit what the location landmarks might be.
Understood.
So on that level, let's just look at the basics. Cat's going to be the 6th house ruler of animals. That's going to be Mercury.
Okay.
Mercury's in the 8th, which is not a super great sign. And what we want to see is the cat has been missing. Is the cat, has the cat passed? And the way that we see that is by looking for aspects with the ruler of the 8th house, first and foremost. So in this case, that's going to be Jupiter. And you can see that the two have recently separated from opposition.
Right.
So we're going to actually back this up and, oops, hold on. Let me just, this is all messed up. Okay. Can you see the animated chart? So if I back this up 4 days ago, December 26th,
right,
they met in an aspect, an opposition with each other 4 days ago. It's interesting because this aspect I've talked about on my channel a bunch. It is mutual reception by detriment and opposition. So when you see the cat trading places with the ruler of death, I would say the most basic level is, you know, I'm like 75, 80% sure that probably the cat passed.
Right.
But this is a very bizarre configuration in terms of like, what could that mean that there's mutual reception and they're in each other's houses? Could this mean that the cat somehow avoided a very close call? Like, you know, like maybe I'm less confident about that. You know what I mean?
Right.
But I would hold out that if it were my cat, I would be like, that gives me a little room for doubt. Because that's a very specific and weird way to see death in a chart when there's some mutual exchange between the two.
Yeah, right.
Now, if we, let me bounce around here for a second. So we'll have one answer that says my most confident answer is probably that the cat has unfortunately passed. And I'm really sorry to say that. Like I know that sucks. On the other hand, let's just say most hopeful interpretation is that the cat is alive and had a close call somehow. The next thing that I would look for would be any testimony of return. And then we'll look for a landmark. Okay, so we'll kind of do everything for you. We'll give you kind of some options.
Awesome.
Here we go. So if I speed this up just a little bit, the only testimony of return that we have would be for Mercury to get to Venus. That happens, but I mean, not in horary speak, between now and January 19th is an eon.
Wow.
So the testimony of retrieval at the very least would suggest that it's probably a ways away. Like it wouldn't be like today. You would probably get the cat back within a week or something, or 2 weeks.
Okay.
Interestingly, I've had some horaries with missing animals where they've come back like a month or even 2 months later. I actually had a horary not long ago where it looked to me like the cat had passed and it came back, but like 2 months later. So one thing that I've learned is that, you know, sometimes my judgment of the chart goes like, this doesn't look good. And then it's like, well, yeah, because it's 2 months until you see the cat again. That has happened before. Right. So maybe it being a ways off would be another possibility. Let's look for a landmark, because some charts are also like, well, just go look, you know, and then you don't find the cat because it comes back. You find the cat because you know where to look. In this case, we have in this direction, we're going the planet here is heading toward the west, right, by diurnal motion.
Right.
So you would think if the top of the chart is north and the bottom is, or excuse me, other way around. Let me just see here. So, yeah, so if it's coming down in this direction, the diurnal motion would bringing it to the south and the west. So you would think of the diurnal motion as bringing it down toward the horizon of the Earth, which is the southern direction, as opposed to up, which is more northerly. So, so the southwest, and then you would look for with a fire sign. You think of places that are warm, like it would have, you know, like seeking shelter somewhere.
Okay.
This could also mean, for example, that the you know, some place to the southwest of you that the cat has found some shelter in, either outdoors or in someone else's home.
Okay.
In which case, you know, putting the signs up, stuff like that in that general direction would be the way to go. So other than that, it's really hard for me to put a finger on it. It's not like Mercury. I mean, Mercury's been direct in this chart for a while, so it's not like the retrograde of the station can give us a ton of information. You know.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Another thing, shelters. Have you checked shelters? One other thing that we can see is that Mercury has recently had contact with Saturn in the 12th, which could be like a shelter.
That's right. I was looking at that T-square there with Mercury and Jupiter and Saturn. I'm wondering what that was. I did look in one shelter and didn't find him.
Okay.
So yeah. Saturn in this interpretation has to do with shelter.
Possibly. I mean, I'm trying to be as optimistic as I can. You know, you know, Saturn in the 12th is in the fall and detriment of Mercury too, right? So but a hopeful interpretation of Saturn in the 12th would be like some kind of shelter. But Mercury in the 8th, having just opposed the ruler of the 8th, is, I think, again, like my first interpretation would probably be, you know, the cat has probably passed, but look to the southwest and maybe near some place of shelter or warmth, and maybe search that way and see if you find the cat. And if not, then, you know, let me know what happens. And for sure, when it comes to stuff like this too, I always tell people, like, if your cat comes back and this caused you unneeded anxiety, let me know. I'll give you a free reading.
Well, I mean, everything that you've said so far kind of makes sense. You know, if you have a diabetic cat that's been gone for several days, you know, the 8th house placement is not that much of a surprise. We'll definitely look to the south and the west in the sense of warmth. I guess it's like, because it's Sagittarius fire sign. So we'll look for that too. He was seen last headed west. So there's that.
Yeah. Yeah. There's someone named Morty Fried who put this in. The cat died. The new moon will illuminate the whereabouts. Mercury aspecting Venus will mark the physical retrieval of the cat or its ashes in a fire sign. The cat is near a warm boundary. I don't disagree with most of that. I don't feel probably quite as confident as Morty Fried does, but you know, those are interesting details that are in line with the history of horary craft.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, James. I hope this was helpful, man. I'm so sorry.
Thank you. Yeah. Absolutely.
All right. You have a good day.
Yes.
All right. Bye. Okay. That's a tough one. Oh my gosh. It just, you know, it's kind of gutting to talk about missing animals. Diane. Hi. How are you?
Oh, I'm thrilled to be on today. Thank you so much.
I'm glad that you're here. What's your date of birth?
It's 3/25/65.
And the time?
Is 7:11 a.m.
And the location?
Was Oak Lawn, Illinois.
2 words, right?
Yes.
Okay, there we go. Cook County, does that sound right?
Yep.
Okay. I have you as Taurus rising. Does that sound correct?
That's correct.
All right. I'm going to put your chart up on the screen. Tell me what we want to talk about.
Well, the past 10 years have just been, the last even 4 years, the last 10 years have been a lot of change. Most of my life, I've been focused on career. I've tried really hard I've made some bold changes, decisions, sacrifices to really try and move into my dharma. And then I always seem to retract back to a safe place. And the last 3 or 4 years, there's been just really unexpected changes in family. This past year, just this summer, my mom passed.
Wow.
But I changed jobs in the spring, right before my mom passed. And I went back to a place where I worked before, and I'm still there. I think just because my spirit was just tired. The last few years have just been so much just change, caring for my mom, a lot of strain. And I was like, can we just reset and just get some stability? But almost immediately, well, my mom passed within 2 weeks. Well, within 2 weeks of being in the job, my mom passed. So that threw a wrench in everything. But I feel like in the place I'm at in my life, it's a little bit like now or never. Are you going to finally move toward your dharma, or have you just, like, I feel tired from life. Like, did I just give up? Did the system just beat me? But I went back to this job, which should be familiar. I've done it before. And it feels like an old version of me. I'm like, I'm not this person anymore. Like the aspects that I've grown out of that I know aren't healthy for me helped me do this job well in the past. And so it almost feels triggering. So I'm trying to figure out, I feel like the universe is saying, no, don't sit just yet. But the changes have been relentless. And so I'm trying to figure out whether I will be shifting into a job in a different job in the near future. And if that will be closer to really my heart rather than the stability, which drove my most recent decision.
Sure, of course. I'm just going to...
not that those two have to be exclusive. I would love for them to be together, stability and heart.
Yeah. Well, one thing that I like to ask people is like, okay, so we know that maybe this job isn't ideal. What do you think is, or do you not have a clear sense of that?
It's related to health and teaching, coaching. I'm a scientist by training. So really finding the intersection between the work I've always been attracted to is really, I became a scientist because I was interested in studying what they knew so I could actually bring it into the realm of consciousness. So it's always been that line kind of between the pragmatic and the spirituality, because I don't see them as exclusive, but two sides of the coin. And so really moving into that in a pragmatic way with some body work practices that I know that are founded in science, but really tap into the greater consciousness and sensing of ourselves, if that makes sense. So it's teaching and helping others, particularly in the last few years, I've really found a connection with the aging community and older adults and helping them live their life to the fullest.
Yeah, totally. And let me ask this question. It's a very practical question. I don't mean it to sound like a joy kill, but how realistic is it? The money piece of this is always a big deal for people, right? It's like, do you need to earn a certain amount of dollars that becomes, impractical when it, can you switch jobs? Do you have enough room or space, or does your partner make enough money or whatever, where you can potentially do these kinds of things and not have a tremendous amount of pressure to earn the same amount of money or something like that?
I wish, because I'm also facing pending divorce.
Okay.
So that's kind of why I was leaning towards the stability. So I see it as, I've always kind of imagined it as a transition, maybe the next couple of years, suck away some more money, get through the divorce, and then maybe be doing part-time, but at least maybe with an organization that feeds my heart while I transition into something. But that's where I just am like, oh my gosh. Like,
yeah. That's
it
a lot.
just seems like it's been a really long journey. And I see a lot ahead of me, but it's, how am I going to get there when my fundamental foundation is changing dramatically?
Yeah. Okay. I'm just looking at a few things here. So when do you expect the divorce to be finalized?
Based on the state laws, we have to do a year separation. So probably a year and a half.
Okay.
Or it could be sooner. That's also kind of a question, but it's probably a year.
Okay.
Or a little more out.
All right. So I've been looking at some of your zodiacal releasing periods, which I had to do off screen because it just kind of jumbles up the screen. Let me put your bi-wheel up. Can you see this?
Yes, I can.
Yeah. I can't help but notice that we are talking about your passion for a kind of spiritual science. That's what I heard coming through you, is like, I'm interested in a spiritual version of science. As a new moon is forming within hours on your moon in the 9th house. There's some other things that are happening to me that reflect that this passion for alternative forms of knowledge, healing, science is going to continue to be a real theme. And that is that Uranus is also stationing right on your Jupiter. So you can see right here. And then the new moon forming today on your moon, right? So I see those little details and I go, yeah, this isn't going away. This isn't just a fanciful thing, right? This is something you're really passionate about. Remember that Jupiter's in your house of Dharma. So you were asking about Dharma. This is one of the Dharma houses. The 9th house is one of the Dharma houses. You also have South Node eclipses happening in the 5th house. That's really important because the 5th is called the joy derived from one's Dharma. You have a constellation of Virgoan planets there. And that could, along with some 12th house planets, that could mean that it's a little, you might have a tendency to deny or neglect the joy of your Dharma. It's like kind of your Dharma, but not quite the full happy place. That I think do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, and I think it's all those Virgo planets. Like I go to the practical. Okay, what's the plan? Yeah. And I get very strategic. That's that Capricorn moon too.
Yep.
And that kind of takes the joy out of it. I get really, and I feel like I need to expand or open up a little bit. But
yeah, exactly. So we're in a stage where the Dharma's becoming clearer. I love these topics. I love the intersection between this topic and that topic. These are the things I'm passionate about. Okay, well then what's the problem? Well, the problem is I'm going through a divorce. The problem is I need to earn money. The problem is, remember earlier when I was talking about Dharma in the Q&A, and I said one of the things that makes Dharma so difficult is that the world only allows certain Dharmas to be profitable or to be sustainable. And that sucks. So at any rate, there's also voices in us that may keep us from those things because we tell ourselves that's impractical, or I'm not deserving of doing things that I love, or, so we have to contend with those voices within as well. One thing that I would point to here, though, is the fact that Pluto has just entered your 10th house. Us Taurus risings, we got to stick together during this time because there's some big changes coming around career. So the Pluto transit in the 10th is not, it's slowly sort of hitting Venus and the Sun in the 12th. And I suspect that one of the things that may be doing is stirring to life some elements of you that maybe are quite brave and powerful and, maybe less risk averse, and more bold, but they're kind of in this 12th house space. It's maybe difficult for them to express themselves. There's like maybe a lack of confidence, or there's a tendency to undercut yourself. So I wonder about Pluto kind of waking those up through a gentle sextile a little bit while Uranus is on Jupiter. And I think at the very least, when we start getting clearer about what we're really passionate about, that starts to clear the way. Like, for example, is there a connection between what's been growing in you and the decision to leave the marriage?
No, that's been coming for a long time.
It's been a long time in the work. What is the most, without getting too personal, I don't want you to be on the spot here, but like, what would you say has been at the heart of this divorce? Like who?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Different values, different. Yeah. I have felt stifled to be able to have the freedom because he's very practical. And even though I had a strategic plan of how to do things, yeah, it wasn't nurturing. Let's say it wasn't nurturing.
Okay, so it wasn't nurturing, it was overly practical. And one of the things you've complained about with this job transition is the over practicality that you tend to sink back into, right? So you see how there's a little bit of a mirroring there? And what I'm saying is that when we start getting clear on one level, this is too practical, and then the marriage, right? But then over here, we're going, my career feels too practical, feels like an old version of me. I'm more passionate about this or that. I don't want to be so practical. You see how the two things are together. So what I'm saying is, I think that the transit of Pluto in the 10th, especially as it gets closer to squaring the ascendant-descendant axis, which is going to happen in the next 2 years. Let's take this forward just a little bit. So let's get Pluto to about 8 degrees. So right it gets into about this space. This is 2027. I know that seems crazy. It's about 3 years from now. But here's what's happening at that time. You've got North Node eclipses in your 10th house. That starts opening brand new pathways, like seriously uncharted territory in the realm of your career. At the same time, Pluto is squaring the ascendant-descendant axis, providing a transformation of identity that also constellates through the old karma in relationships. That probably is what you're looking for. Between now and then, you're going to have Saturn transiting through your 12th house, right? The passion and the direction and the clarity of what you want is there, but I suspect it's going to take a few years before the divorce is cleared and before new opportunities really start opening something new for you. But at this level, I would be very hopeful and optimistic. Like realistically, the clarity that you need has already started transforming things. But just because it started transforming things doesn't mean that we're, like I remember in 2009 being like, if I could do anything, I'd do astrology. Well, it wasn't until late 2010 that I started my practice, So for a year and a half, I went through a space where I was many times like, well, I'll never do that. It was just impractical, blah, 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 blah. And then all of a sudden the door opened later, just later than I wanted it to, because when the connection to your Dharma appears really strongly, like the Uranus on your Jupiter in the first house, and like the South Node eclipses in Virgo, clearing out some overly practical baggage, and your overly practical relationship is being released, and thank you, and now it's leaving. And then we see Pluto gradually working up. The North Node eclipse is gradually moving in. Your Saturn finishing through the 12th. Saturn comes into the first house while those eclipses are happening, and Pluto's squaring the ascendant-descendant. And suddenly there's going to be this sense of like this mantle of responsibility and change that will happen with Saturn in the first house. Now I have to take on the responsibility of being this new person. And it probably will be like another thing that's like fun. It's like right now, all of this is probably kind of exhilarating to have this clarity. But when these things come through, there's going to be like a mantle of like, are you starting your own business, or are you having to develop something while working a semi-practical job on the side, or those things will happen. But Saturn being in the first house in Taurus during this period will also like create this sense of like, there's no one that can do this but me, and you'll feel really empowered by Saturn in the first house on that level too.
Yeah, well, that really aligns with what my gut instinct has really kind of said, and even my Virgo analysis of everything. I'm like, it's about 3 years. It feels like it's a couple years. So that reaffirms what I'm feeling right now, which isn't great news, but that everything is breaking down and just disassembling in my life. Like all of the past structures are just clearing away. And so maybe, I guess just the next couple of years, really preparing, thinking, just kind of, because it does feel like it's about 2 or 3 years away.
Yeah, it's just being realistic about it.
Question of like, is it any sooner?
Yeah. I mean, one thing that I would be very hopeful about is that the financial situation is about to change dramatically with Uranus entering your second house in July of next year, right? So that'll probably coincide with shifting around money and finances with the divorce, however you guys are going to work things out. But Uranus entering that second house to stay in 2026. Like it'll dance in and out of Gemini in 25. And then it's there to stay in 26, which starts aligning more closely with the North Node eclipses and Pluto squaring the ascendant descendant. Uranus in the second house will liberate things around money too. It'll bring in new ideas, inventiveness, breakthroughs, stuff like that. So, just trust the process.
Wonderful. That is so helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And tell me how things go. I hope you'll stay in touch.
Yeah, I will. Absolutely.
Okay. Take it easy, Diane.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. So a little note on craft. What I tell people in my programs when we read for live clients for like a full hour, and we really get deep, these are mini readings, right? So we get deep in a real reading, like an hour long type of reading, get much deeper. But one thing that's consistent, no matter if you're doing a 15-minute, an hour-long reading, is how can I deliver accurate information that is hopeful, provides encouragement, but is not phony or fake, right? So that has to do with how we utilize our craft, what we focus on, and how we talk about it. And those are really important details. So like in a situation like Diane's, she doesn't have an easy path in front of her, but she has a hopeful path in front of her. Everything that she wants and desires and hopes for, on some level, I don't believe is at all out of the question. But how do you get there over 2 to 3 years? That's not necessarily the easiest path in the world, but there's a path outlined there that is hopeful, right? So I think in readings, we're always trying to give people a path of hope and encouragement that's also realistic. For example, going back to Leah's chart, Pluto moon square is no joke. You can hear what she's been through with her mother, right? So we're not unrealistic about that. We don't paint that into unicorns, Pluto opposing that moon right now, while Uranus is squaring Venus. The connection between love and the constellation of mom karma is going to be a big deal. It's not going to be easy. But if there's a willingness to love and be loved, to change, to heal, that's what matters. When you hear that from a client, that's what you need to see as an astrologer that says this transit's going to be good for them. It's in it, how I know the difference? Because there'll be someone who comes in and they don't say, I'm working to heal ancestral karma for my kids. I really desire love, but I'm not sure it's in the cards for me. That's humble and that's sincere. And that's someone who's willing to do the work. And when you hear that, generally speaking, these transits tend to provide people with evolutionary opportunities for growth and healing. It's when someone comes in and they're entitled, they're expectant, they're rude, they're demanding of me or of the astrology or of the universe, which is rare, really. Most of my clients are not like that. Most of you listening to this are not like that. But when people come in with that attitude, my reading will be not discouraging, but it will be slightly more realistic because you just kind of, there's like a little switch that you're sliding along a scale based on, the humility, the sincerity, and the willingness to change and be changed that people carry with them into a reading. Because we know as astrologers, seeing so many people over time, that it's that attitude that makes all the difference in the world with how these things turn out and help us realize some of our dreams and also grow as people, So anyway, just some thoughts for you guys. All right, one last client for the day, Brianna. Hey.
Hi. Oh
Is
my
it
gosh, I'm
Brianna?
so excited. Brianna, yeah.
Brianna,
Or
okay.
Brie. I go by Brie mostly.
Okay, Brie, very cool. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for taking me.
Yeah,
I've got a lot of questions for you, so I'm excited to get to chat.
Yeah, totally. What's your date of birth?
January 12th, 1990, and 12:34 a.m.
And the place?
Des Plaines, Illinois. 2 words, DES, and then P. Yeah.
Okay, so I have you as Libra rising.
Yep.
With the perfectly balanced white and black stripes on your shirt. Of course, you're a Libra. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, let me put your chart up on the screen. All righty. Okay, tell me what we want to talk about.
Okay, so there's a lot. I'm in your year one class right now.
Okay.
And so there was some stuff that came up that I kind of want to clarify now that I have the opportunity. And that's
Sure.
with the insect and, with my Venus, moon opposition. I also just came across like a video on YouTube where you did a lecture series that was on with Kelly Surtees on special signatures, and
Mhm.
it kind of went through everything that we just learned, but then added to it. And when I look at that, so it talked about the MC and the ascendant, kind of drawing your focus to those rulers, and then looking at, sect placement. And there's so many overlaps that seem like contradicting in my chart. And of course, I have all these oppositions. So it's like, it's no surprise that there's so much like contradiction. But how do you read that when things start to get so overlapped and complicated?
Okay, so just so I understand, so the
Mhm.
overlap and the complication with Venus opposite the moon, and what are the specific parts of it that feel like they're overlapping and confusing for you?
So looking at Venus retrograde
Yep.
and that being under the beams,
Mhm.
how does that come into play with like it kind of seems like my Venus is ending up to be like not really beneficiary. Like it kind of dampens a lot with a lot of the add-ons of, it being under the beams and retrograde, getting closer to combustion.
And it's
Uh,
concerning for you that it's opposite the sect light,
yeah,
is that what you were saying?
and that, yeah, there's a lot. Like,
Okay, so here's what I would recommend doing. And I do this in all my classes. You've probably heard me say this before. It's so annoying. You've heard me say it so many times. Let's not start with abstract levels of reasoning about what it means, right? Let's think about concrete expressions. For example, let's think about love, relationships, women, daughters, and sisters, all like good, solid moon Venus topics. Have you ever had conflicts or struggles within communities, groups, families, with other women, with sisters, with mother? Has anything like that manifested so far?
yeah, so I'm actually going through a lot at the moment. It's been difficult the past few years, especially for me. Pluto, obviously going through all of Capricorn and then being on my IC and now conjunct Venus and getting closer to being opposite my moon. I 2 years ago was fired from a job that from being 5 years working under a narcissistic boss that had like this really awful impact on me. And all of a sudden, like through that experience, I started seeing these like narcissistic qualities being like mirrored all around me. And my mom, my best friend, I don't have a lot of friends. I feel very overwhelmed by life. And so, I put my focus into, few relationships, and it just seems like they're all collapsing. And, in 2020, like that Pluto Saturn conjunction happened on my birthday. And like weeks later, me and my husband decided to get divorced. And so it's just been like kind of this whirlwind since then. And everything has just like fallen apart. And I feel like I love change. And so like I get excited about possibility. But like I just have thought that things would have like firmed up by now. And I keep waiting for like the light at the end of the tunnel and things to kind of like clarify. And I feel like I don't know if I'm like walking in the right direction. I just am like so confused now.
Yeah. May I ask what you do for a living?
So I was an interior designer. I still am. I thankfully got a really big project from a past client of mine, self-employed. And then I started a YouTube channel teaching astrology. I'm a Reiki master and yoga instructor as well.
Cool. Yeah, that's awesome. So when you say you feel really overwhelmed and like you looking for a light at the end of the tunnel, is that, it doesn't sound to me like that is with regard to that doesn't sound like it has to do with your career. It sounds like it's a more social thing. Like it's more about relationships.
I think it's more about stability. It kind of is in my career because I don't, like, I feel kind of done with the design. I mean, I still really love it, but I'm so passionate about astrology. Like since I started learning about it in 2021, like it just really resonated with me, and I really want to go more into like the healing arts, but I have like a lot of responsibilities to manage finances, and I'm scared about money and how to kind of like, I thought that, I put so much effort into kind of building this company and trying to, start a brand, and it just doesn't seem to be working. And I'm like, there's a balance of like, I know things take time, and, I just have to be persistent, but like, there was a question I asked you on one of these other live readings about, like, how do you know if what you're doing is just about needing more time to develop for success, or if you're just kind of spinning your wheels in something that isn't right?
Okay, yeah, I remember that question. Yeah, it was a good one. So it sounds to me like there's been, when was the divorce?
2020.
Okay, and when did you start these practices, like this kind of yoga teacher, astrologer? When did those practices begin?
So I got my yoga teacher training in 2013, and then the summer after, I got same thing, 2013 my Reiki. But I've been really focused. That was the same year I graduated with my an architecture degree, and so I went into interior design. And I'm obviously multi-passionate, so it's been difficult to try to. I have ADHD, and so like I get overwhelmed, and I feel like I'm slower than, so it's hard. I have all these things that I want to do, but it's hard for me to do, to be successful at things unless I like am hyper focused on it. And
Sure.
so, I spent so much effort into like my relationship and trying to create a home and a foundation to start a family, and then that all like fell apart. And so now I'm like not even sure if I want a family. Like it's so weird because that was like such my focus for so long. Like I really wanted that. And I don't know if that was just conditioning or what, but now I'm just like my youth, I felt like I was so I knew exactly what I wanted to do. And, from a very young age, I like wanted to flip homes, and like, I really wanted to do like real estate development, and I still do, but I wanted to be on my own. But, my dad passed away in 2009, and that like kind of started my whole Pluto transit and my, spiritual awakening. And since then, it's just kind of been one thing after another. And yeah, like now, like it just really kind of like stripped everything away to the point where I'm just like confused. Like I don't know why, yeah, I felt, yeah. So
Yeah, that's a lot. What I'm hearing you say, and tell me if I'm like accurately reflecting where you're at. There's been a lot of destabilization in the past year, in somewhat recent years, especially from like the divorce onward, and a feeling of like what's meant to stick or last, and what can I build in this lifetime that is going to be sort of enduring, that gives me a solid sense of focus, that something that can build and grow and like be sustained.
Yeah, exactly. And like where I should be putting my energy, like, because, I always thought that I would get married, and, my primary focus would be like raising a family, and then hopefully having the luxury to kind of do my design stuff as more of like passion than necessary, like for income.
Yeah.
And that obviously didn't work out. And so it's like, and now, you know, I'm totally on my own and I need to be self-sufficient, and I have so much cardinal energy. Like I don't really work well, like being told what to do. And so,
Right.
like, I think I need to be self-employed, but there's no stability or security with that. And so like, it's like, I don't want to search for security in another person, but then it's also like, part of that is life too, right? Is having partnerships. And, but yeah, I just don't know if that's right for me. Like if that's where my focus should be.
Let me paint a picture for you, and we'll see if it helps to at least, let's just start by trying to validate where you're at and what you've been through with the chart. And then let's see if we can provide some hope for the kinds of transformations and clarity that you're looking for.
Perfect.
Let's imagine that the planet in the chart, the only planet in the chart that is going to most deeply and accurately represent you as a person, is the ascendant ruler. It's a very traditional, solid way of looking at it. That's the Venus retrograde. Now, let's start imagining, rather than Venus being some abstract thing we need to decode, let's imagine that it is a symbolic picture of you in this lifetime. We start off, we put it in the 5th house, which is called the joy derived from one's dharma. And we see that the north node of the moon is in that house. So let's just start by saying, what are you here in this lifetime to do? Well, one simple way of putting it is you are here to not only find your dharma, but to find the joy and happiness that comes with it. The creative fulfillment of being you. Okay, well, that all sounds lovely, but here we have a bit of an issue. Venus is retrograde. So imagine now that you, as the person seeking the joy from your dharma, is Venus as the evening star, retrograding under the beams of the sun, becoming invisible. So a person like that might, with a symbol like that in the chart, right, might go through a period of time where you start off feeling like, I'm a designer. You know, I've got this gift, Venus in the 5th house. Like I'm a creative designer and I'm a Libran rising. I design things, right? Like interior design. That's so Libra rising with Venus in the 5th. But then as my life progresses, that role, that sense of who I am comes covered over. I become invisible. And then not only that, but I start burning up. I start becoming consumed.
Yeah, I definitely feel like I'm burnt out.
Yeah, right. And just overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And then gradually, remember, follow the symbolism. I rise as a morning star, reborn, recreated, still connected to the root, the radix figure, which is the house of creativity and dharma, but reborn and rebirthed in the Capricornian space as a morning star. So you kind of imagine that symbolic process taking place in the chart, representing what you in this lifetime are meant to go through. And right now, Pluto is right on that Venus. So you are, and you look back to 2020, Jupiter and Saturn conjoined on that Venus during your divorce year, You have been going through a period of time in which you are literally, you can think about it like I am literally Venus being burnt up in my retrograde. But the promise of this placement is that Venus is going to rise again in your lifetime as the morning star. And as the morning star, what is she? A confident woman, right? Who knows her creative place, is grounded in that Capricornian space, which is, I know my discipline, I know my focus, I know my calling, I know the mountain I'm climbing, right? It's in the 4th house of home and family. Is there some potential that it could actually end up being about home and family too? Not just your work, but home and family. I think there might be some healing there. Maybe that desire has to burn off right now because it can't be the way you thought it was going to be, or it can't be all of what fulfills you, or not in the way you thought it would. But maybe that even comes back. Who knows? But Venus is retrograde through the heart of the sun is a rebirthing process. And we can see that you're in the process of it right now because we look for planetary triggers on Venus to determine when those moments are going to be most acute. And Pluto on Venus is about as acute as it comes. Mm-hmm. So we have to let this process take place over the next couple of years. Remember in the last client's chart, or maybe it was 2 clients ago, I can't remember now, I talked about those north nodes coming, that north node eclipses in Aquarius coming in a few years from now. Let me show you a couple of things that are happening in a few years from now that I think you will be really excited by. All right. Okay, so let's take a look, right? Here's Pluto on Venus. Fun times, right? You're right in the thick of it.
Yeah.
And Pluto's going to go over that Venus and then retrograde and go back over, right? And then go forward, back over. See, that's all between now and January of 2026. That's a full year. As that's happening, look who's hanging out in your career house. A Jupiter return with an exalted Jupiter. Lovely, just lovely. So starting June of next year through June of the following year, while Pluto's going over that Venus, signifying the death and rebirth of your sense of Dharma, what gives you joy from it, you as a person going through the fire of that, retrogradation signified in the birth chart, that this happens while a very fertile, prolific Jupiter is returning in your career house. That's a wonderful omen, just wonderful. Now, if we take this forward a little bit more, we're going to get these North Node eclipses coming into your 5th house. Here it is. This is starting in about August of 2026. Let me just speed things up a touch here. Here we go. So here is an eclipse that will be taking place. Let me get that right up to the degree. I want you to notice this eclipse right here. This is a solar eclipse in Aquarius that's landing exactly on your North Node in the 5th house. This is February of 2027. Okay, so both of those, at this time, by the way, we see Pluto pretty much done with Venus. Okay, so when you look, what's that? Oh, opposing your moon, right. Fun times.
Yeah.
Right? But the good thing about that is that's your career house ruler.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So you've got your Cancer ruled 10th house. It's your moon. So I would say that you've got a couple of years of a process with Pluto going over that Venus. We know the context of Venus. Yeah, she looks sort of in rough shape, but doesn't that pretty adequately reflect the kind of existential transformation of life purpose that you're going through right now? And by the time this is over, we've got Pluto opposing the career house ruler. We've got eclipses or nodal return in the 5th house. So again, trust the process, because you're in a lifetime that has to do with the very deep level of creative and personal transformation around purpose, calling, happiness derived from purpose and calling. It's not an easy thing to go through the flames of combustion. But when you think about that as a rebirthing process, Venus rising as the morning star is a confident, bold, decisive, it's much more assertive about what it is. And when you see that also kind of retrograding into that 4th house of Capricorn, what does it mean to have all those planets in Capricorn in the 4th house? Often we can look at stelliums in one of 2 ways. There's an abundance of something that the native and soul has in spades, or there is a need to develop something, right? Another way of looking at it. If we look at it from the standpoint of something that's needed, that is necessary for development, Capricorn is all about having a very strong, earthy, stable, grounded foundation. And when Venus retrogrades kind of symbolically into that Capricornian space as the morning star, we're looking at a much more solid version of Brie, And so I think my encouragement for you is to trust the process of the next couple of years with Pluto over your Venus. There could be new relationships coming in with Saturn and Neptune moving into the 7th house. That's a possibility. I would give you just a tiny bit of caution around putting all of your eggs in one basket. By that, I mean, like, let's say the eggs in one basket would be the only thing that's going to fulfill me is a rock star career, or the only thing that's going to fulfill me is a marriage and family, and then being completely opposed to anything other than that. When Saturn in the 7th is going to square all of these Capricorn planets in the 4th, and you're still going through this transformation of Venus, I think the potential to polarize could be there within yourself. Like, is this about me or is it about love? Is it about family or is it about work? Because even in how you were describing where you're at, you're like, well, I used to think this was everything I wanted and needed, and now I'm not sure it is at all.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it sort of like, let the transformation that you're going through be whatever it wants to be. And it can be many things. It doesn't have to be just one.
Okay. Yeah. And that's what's difficult, because it's hard when I feel so overwhelmed to open up and try all these different things. Like, I feel like, you know, since I don't know how you do what you do, like I have been, you know, I started off this year, like I started my channel at the beginning of the year, and I was like, had this, you know, big game plan. I started out pretty good, actually. I'm proud to look back and be like, wow, I don't know how I did that, because now it's like creating a video for every moon cycle every 2 weeks. And like, I'm like capped out, and I'm like, I this is like taking up so much time and energy, and it's hard to fit that in with other things. Like, I just feel overwhelmed, and I think that that's, you know, also my Capricorn stellium and so many planets and combustion and retrograde, and yeah.
But you're not. Let me make it this clear, right? Like, you're not in combustion, right?
Yeah.
As a soul,
I do feel burnt out.
You can feel, that's fine. That's fair, right? To feel burnt out. But just so that you don't let the language of the chart be a limit for your soul. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
You think about it like this. You are beautiful Venus going through the heart of the sun and coming out the other side. Think about it like that.
Yeah. Okay. And then I was curious, because I was looking at my solar return for next year, and what's interesting about it that just like stands out so strong is that my IC-MC axis, it's at, you know, the anaretic degree, and it just totally switches next year. So my MC is now my IC, and yeah.
You're talking about progressions? What?
My solar return.
Oh, okay. I see.
25.
Here's what I recommend. Don't look at your solar return.
Okay.
Don't stress out about it, because there's already, like, as an astrology teacher and like someone who sees clients, I have real sensitivity to when someone is maybe a little bit more prone to their chart stressing them out. Don't let anything in your chart or your solar return stress you out. Just don't let that happen, because you don't have to. And anything you see in there that's like, oh my God, what does that mean? You know, if that's the response you're getting when you look at things, just step back, do your yoga, take care of yourself.
I was just looking for something to show me that like I'm close to like finding some stability or like a breakthrough. Yeah. You are.
You're close. You're close. You got these transits that we just looked at, right? A couple of years of transits. I think those are going to be really helpful. So like, again, stick with that image of your ascendant ruler Venus going through this process, and knowing that Pluto on that Venus right now is indicating that this is the process of Venus rebirthing that you're going through, and just live it and tend to it. Like, and also just a piece of advice about content creation. You know, my wife started a YouTube channel, and she asked me for advice when she wanted to start it. Like, what do you think I should do? And I said, well, how much content do you want to make? And she was like, I don't know. Like, and I said, what matters most is consistency, in my humble opinion. So if you can do one a week, do one a week. If you can do twice a month, you know, structure it in a way that you're not doing anything more than what you're capable of. And then as your capacity expands, you can expand the amount that you produce. That's the advice I have for everybody. So I hope that's helpful.
That is, yeah. I definitely did that totally backwards. But, you know, I live and learn. I'm like super ambitious, and I'm a little too idealistic that once I'm in it, I realize, okay, I totally did not have realistic expectations.
That happens. It's
Yeah.
totally natural. Brianna, thank you so much, or Brie, I
Thank
should say.
you.
Yeah, thanks
I
for coming
really-
on.
I really appreciate you looking at my chart and giving me some advice. Thank you for
Yeah.
everything.
Well, stay in touch. You know, you're in year one. Like, let me
Mhm.
know how these transits go. You know, let's see how they unfold. And we got a whole community of people that I think are here to support each other through stuff like this. So just
Yeah,
hang in there and tell us how things go.
I love it. Perfect. Thank you.
All right. Bye, Brie.
Bye.
Okay. Amazing. We did some good readings. We have, I think we did a pretty solid Q&A for the day. Let's see where we stand in the Kickstarter campaign, and let's see if we can't rally a little bit more support. Hey, we're at 1,355 backers right now. That is absolutely fantastic. We've rallied a lot of support today. Let's see how many we have left to go. 1,937 minus 1,355. 582 backers left. 582 backers left. Oh, here's the link to donate if you haven't already. If you learned something from those sessions today, if they helped you say, I'm not alone in life, I'm not alone in transits, there's encouragement, there's hope, there's a way of doing astrology that can be uplifting and encouraging, while also very specific, predictively accurate. You know, that's what this channel is all about. Those are our values, and we only try to deepen the expression of them every year. The success of this channel is about the success of an entire community and school and way of doing astrology that is rooted in compassion. If you believe in that kind of thing, please consider supporting us. There's the link in the Kickstarter. We have about 46 hours left. We have 46 hours left. Come study with us. Pick up a class pass, pick up a bundle. You save a lot more that way. Pick up the year ahead astrology, you know, that kind of thing. To me, a couple of principles that are worth reiterating is that, we did a little longer reading for Brie. But why? Because, you know, every client is different and comes in with a different psychic load. Do you know what I mean? Brianna came in with a huge amount of like bustling energy that's like, she's clearly really overwhelmed. If we're going to say something that really seeps in, we need to take the space to let the energy kind of sink in. We need to hold space open, build some trust, allow the nerves to calm a little bit, allow the overwhelm to be expressed and shared and seen and validated. Those are really important dimensions of how we treat each person when they come in for a reading. And, you know, mini readings, sometimes they just demand that they not be a mini reading. They just say, that's not going to work. We're going to need a little bit more time to open the space up for this one. Hermes is leading every step of that. When we study astrology, when we develop a relationship with an oracle, what we're doing is we're learning how to read every situation, and we're learning how to speak and use symbols to address the situation and try to give people some settledness in their heart. You know, this is good work. I believe so deeply in it. So I'm just really thankful for the opportunity to do it, and to share it and to see other people like encouraged by it. So thank you to everybody, 1,356 people who have already supported the channel. Really appreciate you all. That leaves us with not a ton left. Let's see, 1,356, 581 left to go. I think we can get there, guys. We only have 46 hours left to go. So pitch in if you haven't yet. Here's the link one more time to the Kickstarter. Thank you again to everybody who's donated to support us. We will be back for one last live stream tomorrow at 11 a.m. Central Time, where, you know, I'll do some readings and answer some questions. Hilda's back there. You can see her. She's like, dude, we've been doing a lot of astrology lately, buddy. Can we go for a walk? So maybe we'll go do that next and see the Bob Dylan movie. Okay, you guys have a great day, and we'll see you again tomorrow. Be sure you check out the Astrology of January video we launched today, and the horoscopes will be up tomorrow as well. Bye, everyone.